What's up, everybody? Welcome to a logical, plausible, probable stream here on a Friday night. As usual, I hadn't necessarily decided to do one, but I've been thinking about it. And when I got home from a crazy day, noticed that somehow I had hit the 1,200 subscribers mark. And since it's a Friday, since I just hit 1,200, decided, man, I am gonna have to do a stream. We've got great content like the awesome streams have been happening from the one and only Dr. James Tour. Had an epic after show from his most recent one, and I decided that, hey, let's do a celebration, a open mic, and a review of Dr. Tour's episode before, from the one before last night's, on the hype that happens in the Origin of Life research community, the YouTube Evo atheists who rely heavily on these supposedly, we've solved all these problems. There was an article with a headline that said so, therefore it's true. I don't actually have to research it for myself. And anyway, I thought it'd be fun to kind of go through that. Before I do that, as we're kind of getting people trickling in, before I start getting into this awesome lecture from Dr. Tour, man, I tell you what, today was one for the ages. So I live in Nashville, Tennessee. We've had quite a bit of snow and ice. Got up this morning. I was going to try and run some errands, and while I was removing the 2.5 inches of ice from my windshield, I realized that wow, I've got a flat tire. Well, that sucks. So got a flat tire. I'm in an iced over vehicle. And then I go to start my car and it won't start. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Now, last week I'd had an issue and I was like, man, I think maybe this cold weather may be taking out my auxiliary battery, which is a normal 12-volt battery. I've got a Prius. So I wasn't too worried about my main one, but I'm thinking, man, okay, the cold may be causing this problem. So I'd already been thinking about getting that fixed. Well, my neighbor jumps me off. We get, I'm like, okay, I literally live less than 100 yards from a gas station. Okay, so I'm like, okay, maybe I can, even though the tire's flat, maybe I can get to the gas station, put air in the tire, and then we'll go see what we can do with the battery. Yeah, no. So that wasn't happening. So I then decide, all right, I am going to, there's actually a pawn shop not too far from me. I'm going to walk down there and see if I can buy like an old air compressor and or like a jump box and air compressor combo, come back, pump up the tire, and go solve it. Well, I walk down there. Yes, they have some jump boxes. All 3 of the jump boxes they have had some issue with the air compressor component of it. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Okay, so I also live 1.4 miles from a Home Depot. So I'm like, no big deal. I will trek down to Home Depot and get one down there. So I set off all warm and wrapped up. I got my boots on, all good to go. Well, all of these stupid shovels trucks have all the snow's just been piled up on the sides of the main road. So I'm like walking through crazy thick snow, stepping around giant mounds of it, all this kind of stuff. And so I tell you what, that was a very long 1.4 miles. Anyway, I get down there and they only have one jump box compressor combo left. I'm like, okay, I'll get that. The stupid thing's heavy. They've got no large bags. So I then proceed to walk back in the snow carrying this stupid jump box, which is heavier than I expected and just harder when you're walking in the snow. Well, anyway, somewhere along the way, I think I strained one of the tensor muscles in my upper thigh. So that was kind of getting sore. Get back to the house, get the air in the tire. Then I can't get enough traction to get out of my driveway. So I get all creative with plywood, reverse, gain some velocity and momentum, finally get my way out of my driveway. And very long story short, next several hours, finally I acquire a battery. But before I acquire the battery, I'm at the Toyota dealership, and it's quite entertaining. Actually know the man whose name is on the dealership, done business with him, but of course I'm not talking to him personally in this context. And I'm like, how much is to replace an auxiliary battery? And I'm told $506. $506 to replace your freaking normal battery. I was like, yeah, no, that's not happening. I guess I'll just do that myself. So then I go buy the battery and drive all the way home. And I'm like, wait a minute, just in case I jack this up, this is a Prius after all. Maybe there's some special thing you have to account for. And I can't get the core refund until I turn in the old battery. So I drive back to the dealership. Turns out because of the weather, they're closing early. So as I'm pulling up, they're literally closing. Like, kid grief. Okay. Drive back to my house. In this time frame, the trucks have come back down my side street. And while they've been clearing off snow, all they did was pile it into our driveways. So I return home and my driveway is now blocked up with snow. So I can't even turn into my own flaming driveway. I then have to park, get a shovel, and clean out a path into my own driveway after I had a cleared path when I left. I now no longer have a cleared path. I managed to do that. In the process, I think I have tweaked my back slightly. I definitely have a pulled leg muscle. And anyway, I then proceeded it took me a grand total of 15 minutes to replace the stupid battery. It's a grand total of 4 bolts, 10 millimeter. It took me 15 minutes to replace the battery. And the jokers at the dealership wanted $506 to replace this battery. But I understand why this may have happened, because turns out that the gentleman who owns the dealership I knew, he actually sold it. They haven't changed the name yet. He sold the entire dealership like a month ago. They haven't done the rebranding yet. So that would explain, I guess, why they raised their per hour charge by $50 an hour. $50 an hour with a 1 hour minimum. So even though it take no more than 15 minutes to swap out the stupid battery, way less if you actually know what you're doing and didn't have to figure out like where everything was. They're going to charge me $175 minimum to swap out a battery, 4 bolts. Yep. So that was fun. But anyway, enough of the tangent about my my crazy day. I'm now laying in bed. I've got a heating pad on my back. Man, feeling much better. Let's get into this stuff. I want to, before we do that, thanks so much to let's see. I know I had a super chat from somebody. Who sent me a super chat? Oh man, gotta go find where that was, because somebody was being very generous. Where did that go? Oh man. Chris Key says thank you, man. Appreciate you. By the way, another thing I found out. I think I figured out why I saw such a boost in subs today, and that is because Matt Powell posted. Oh, Nightmare. Thank you so much for the super chat, Nightmare. Greatly appreciate it. Also got monetized a couple days ago. That was awesome. Actually, the 15th, Monday morning, after I spent 12 hours freezing stuck in ice in my car, I woke up to be an email from YouTube saying I'd been monetized. I was cracking up. I'm sitting there, I woke up in the back of my car and I wrapped up in all these blankets. Been freezing. Actually, it wasn't that bad. I was pretty warm. And I wake up to an email. I'm like, man, Lord, you have a serious sense of humor. I have to go freeze for 12 hours stuck in ice in my car and to wake up to being monetized by YouTube. So greatly appreciate that. Zeal says fixing broken pipes today from a freeze power outage, less hassle than LPP changing a battery. Yeah, it was interesting. And Patrick, no, Graceland is in Memphis. And for those of you who've ever been to Memphis and Nashville, it's like a dramatic difference between the two. Like when you drive into Memphis, you are entering a combat. It's like a quasi combat zone. Like it's got this vibe. There's an aura when you drive into Memphis of like, I better pay attention. I actually had my car broke. I used to do business in Memphis with a TV station over there, and I had my car broken into twice. And the irony of ironies is they didn't steal the stuff that was actually valuable. So, I mean, I had like suits and computer, all this kind of stuff. Nope, didn't steal that stuff. They stole like tennis shoes, sporting equipment, random crap. I'm like, this is like, why would you break into my car? Both times. I think I had I remember one of the trips, I did the math. I had like over $3,000 worth of suits hanging up in the back seat of my car, and they didn't take my suits. And they like stole like a jacket. It's like, this is ridiculous. Anyway, okay, so hey, Jungle, yes, Matt Powell did a hilarious job editing. So that was the other thing. So I'm getting all these subs, people leaving comments and all this stuff, and I'm like, what's going on? And then somebody's like, man, great. I found out about you from Matt Powell. So I go over to Matt Powell's channel, and he had edited together clips from my debate with Godless Engineer. And I actually watched through that and was just cracking up myself. Like, man, the number of face palms by Godless Engineer, crazy. But what reason I bring that up is one of the things that most people don't know is Godless Engineer did an attack video on me exactly 1 month after I started my channel. So it was March 4th, I believe. And I was kind of debating whether or not I was going to even focus on my channel. Should I do anything? Is it worthwhile? Do I have any potential, can I make a difference? Can I make any impact in the YouTube universe? And lo and behold, I wake up and I've got like all these comments. People are going bonkers on me. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? And then I go and find out. Again, I had 12 subs at this point, 12 subscribers. And Mr. 50,000 subs, Godless Engineer, has taken it upon himself to supposedly eviscerate one of my videos. Well, I go and watch it, and I was just blown away at how dumb and just incorrect his supposed counters to my positions were. And so I actually did a video and offered him the opportunity to retract his position. And if he didn't, then I was going to come after him and, annihilate him. And anyway, he does not, and doubles down, makes fun, says, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. So I proceeded to come after him. And anyway, that ultimately culminated in the debate that we had over on Standing for Truth's channel. And man, I came in there to give absolutely no quarter. Of course, at that point, I'd watch a bunch of his videos with him, attacking Christians on a daily basis and making all these things where, supposedly we're just idiots, don't understand what we're talking about, don't know what we're talking about, and, shouldn't even be in the conversation because we're incompetent, uninformed people. And anyway, that led to that whole deal. But I think just for fun, I may actually, before I do Dr. Tour's video, I'm going to show you guys the short video. This was I'm about to play for you, was my statement to Godless Engineer, and offer for him to retract his position on the genetic code not being a code. And it's 2 minutes. We'll go a little bit faster. We'll go 1.25. And yeah, he didn't pay attention apparently.
What's up, everybody? John Maddox here. This is a quick pre-response video reply to Godless Engineer, who the other day decided to attack one of my videos on why evolution has become a central component to the new atheist movements and way to circumvent the need for God in order for life to exist. Now, he specifically attacked my core position, which was that the genetic code is a code base and it's a programming language that enables life to exist and is not purely chemical reactions. Ironically, he responded back and said, yes, it was just chemical reactions, and basically that I didn't know what I was talking about. So, given the fact, Godless Engineer, that you conceded some of my later points and comparisons, that it was not a reasonable conclusion that a code base of any kind would be able to come into existence without an intelligent agent existing prior to its execution, before I spend the time to really dive into why you're stunningly ignorant and uneducated in regards to this whole topic, I would like to grant you the opportunity to retract your positions, or I will be forced to embarrass you in regards to your stunning lack of knowledge and how you apparently are part of the brainwashed demographic that seems unable to actually read basic literature and comprehend what is actually being put forth, and how something directly entails and is not purely analogous to a computer language. So I look forward to your response. Do you retract, or shall I proceed to embarrass you?
Oh man, I was so irritated with him. That was not scripted. I literally ad-libbed that whole uh, video. Just like, you know what? Let's rock and roll, bro. Let's see if you got the proverbial CO Jones to step up and back up your BS. And the irony is, in the relation to our debate, the debate with Godless Engineer, we had started talking about it, and then I got busy with a bunch of the stuff, and then he started talking trash about how I was like trying to run away from the debate, and I'm like, nah, man, let's do it. And because actually what happened is I thought that Standing for Truth was going to be my he was acting as my agent, and I guess he'd forgotten about it, and then we got everything recoordinated. But Godless Engineer had been talking all this trash about how I didn't want to debate him. I was afraid to debate him. You know, I talked a big game. Now he was ready. So let's do it. And then, yeah, the debate happens. And yeah, there was quite a bit of epic annihilation. But all that aside, enough of my rants and diatribes. I'm going to get started on this awesome lecture from Dr. Tour. I'll stop here and there. And anybody who wants to join the stream, link is now in chat. If you want to come in and get on that, I'm going to jump. We're going to start at this point with Dr. Tour lecture a couple minutes in, and where he's talking about how it's not just researchers, it's the press. Everybody is hyping up all these supposed discoveries that they're finding on abiogenesis, and maybe, as I love to say, the difference between confidence and arrogance is being able to back up your BS. And seems that Dr. Tour is saying, you know what? I don't think you guys can back up your confidently spewed bovine scatology. So without further ado, let's get into Dr. Tour.
All right, hype in origin of life claims.
And this misunderstanding has come because of the projections of those who work in the area of origin of life. They do one little thing and then they extrapolate it, and then they work with the press to ramp it up even more, and they project as if they really know it. And so the layperson reads this and says, you see, scientists understand.
So at 13 minutes and 12 seconds, some people say, quote,
but I don't think it's fair to put the blame on scientists. The blame belongs to the press.
And again, some say,
the blame is with the media outlets, not with the scientists.
Well, I think the blame is not just with the media outlets. The blame is also with the scientists who work in the area of origin of life. And that's what I hope to show you. Conversely, I think there's plenty of blame on the origin of life researchers themselves. A, their own claims, regarding their own claims, and B, failing to rein in the press. Now, this has resulted in much misinformation, even into the highest levels of the academy. When I say academy, even into the universities. There are lots of professors who misunderstand where we are in origin of life, what has been done and what hasn't been done, and at the highest levels. And this happens because of this misinformation that is put out. Now, I know it is hard sometimes to rein in the press, sometimes because of their strictures. They do not let you see the things that they have written, and I know that. But there are other times where they give you the draft, or you can request the draft, and you can correct things once they get out of control. But I'm talking today mainly about the hype that's in the research articles themselves, because many professors are highly confused on these topics. These are smart people. Even biology professors sometimes have trouble distinguishing
I love this.
evolution and origin of life. I mean, I've seen it, and I've seen that myself. So anyway, people are really confused.
This is awesome. This hype one part. This is awesome.
Yeah, welcome, Jason. Welcome, Emery. How you all tonight?
Oh, good, thank you. I just can't wait to see this video. I can't wait for you to play it. He smashes it.
Yeah, well, one of the nice things about the way he's got this structured is you even got nice little pause positions to place to stop and think about. But it's kind of it's ironic to me. Like, Dr. Tour is just pointing out the obvious of, hey, this is what's going on. And one of the things, and Emery, I know you and I've talked about it, Jason, we've talked about it before. The reality is that professionals in the industry, right, in the disciplines, they become so hyper focused on whatever their specialty is, and the specialties can become very often in order for them to be an expert in their niche discipline, and then their subset of the discipline, and then the subset of the subset, they just don't have to, but very often the result is they just operate from the perspective that, oh, one of my peers must have already figured this out because it's accepted as consensus, rather than actually going and researching it for themselves. And then I think this piece that we're about to get into, hyped by researchers, Dr. Tour, I'm going to just gamble that Dr. Tour, he may not say it, but I think that one of the illusions is that researchers, they depend on funding. And I think people who, anyone's ever worked in raising capital, like, you have to have a bunch of talking points, you have to have buzzwords, you have to have hype.
And confusing terminology. He said, just to quickly bolster your point, he pulls out a schematic. A printout of one of the papers with all the really complicated, language, with all the different alanines and all the different chemicals and the methods and stuff all mixed in with it. And he said, even though that I'm a chemist, and obviously one of the best in the world and the most quoted ones in the world, he didn't say that though. I'm saying that I'm paraphrasing, but he said, even though I'm a chemist, he said that he showed it, like his notes that he'd made on the printout, how complicated it was. He said, it's so complicated even for me to work it out. But when I get down to the nitty gritty and work it out, it's just, it's just a lot of hype.
And I'm just going to toss an extra grenade in the room because I can. This is not the only field where the pop sci literature massively overhypes things.
Yes.
Like Answers in Genesis has an article on their website basically asking, can we trust anything that the science media says? And they go through and give a bunch of examples where these people make claims in the pop sci media that aren't supported by what's put out in the literature. And I'll link that in the public chat for anybody who wants to read it.
Well, in line with the point you're making, and guys, after this, we'll hop into the next segment here. In line with what you're saying there, I've actually read papers that have been linked in a pop sci article before. And then as I'm reading the article, or the paper that's mentioned in the article, I'm like, they didn't come to the conclusion or nowhere close to the level of assertion of, it being fact and proven beyond doubt kind of thing, when you're actually reading through the paper. And I'm like, your headline doesn't even remotely match the actual substance of the paper you're referring to.
Yep.
And it's a very common thing. Okay, let's go into this next segment here.
Oh, you're gonna love it.
And here we go.
Verify that's where I got that quote from, or that's where I pulled that video capture from. I'm thankful to Dave Farina. Thankful that Dave Farina attempts to teach the layperson about scientific topics on his YouTube channel, Professor Dave Explains. That's a commendable endeavor. I therefore seek no contest with Dave Farina, only clarity. I'm not here to pick a fight, not at all. I don't want to have any fight with Dave. I just want to
just quickly. Tua hasn't obviously watched many of Dave's videos.
Other synthetic chemists.
If he says that about him, Dave's just there to attack YEC.
Particularly invite a critique from my synthetic chemist colleagues and students studying synthetic chemistry and those studying origin of life. If disputing, please reference a literature article so that I can read and learn. So I want to read and learn. So if you're
did I rewind this?
Just send me the article. Send me a reference to the article, the DOI or something, so I can access it. Take a look at it myself.
No, it's not worth it.
All right, hype in origin of life claims.
And this misunderstanding has come because of the projections of those who work in the area of origin of life. They do one little thing and then they extrapolate it, and then they work with the press to ramp it up even more, and they project as if they really know it. And so the layperson reads this and says, you see, scientists understand.
So at 13 minutes and 12 seconds, some people say, quote,
but I don't think it's fair to put the blame on scientists. The blame belongs to the press.
And again, some say,
The blame is with the media outlets, not with the scientists.
Well, I think the blame is not just with the media outlets. The blame is also with the scientists who work in the area of origin of life. And that's what I hope to show you. Conversely, I think there's plenty of blame on the origin of life researchers themselves. A, their own claims, regarding their own claims, and B, failing to rein in the press. Now, this has resulted in much misinformation, even into the highest levels of the academy. When I say academy, even into the universities. There are lots of professors who misunderstand where we are in origin of life, what has been done and what hasn't been done, and at the highest levels. And this happens because of this misinformation that is put out. Now, I know it is hard sometimes to rein in the press, sometimes because of their strictures. They do not let you see the things that they have written, and I know that. But there are other times where they give you the draft, or you can request the draft, and you can correct things once they get out of control. But I'm talking today mainly about the hype that's in research articles themselves, because many professors are highly confused on these topics. These are smart people. Even biology professors sometimes have trouble distinguishing between evolution and origin of life. I mean, I've seen it, and I've seen that myself. So anyway, people are really confused. So let's start looking into this. Again, here's the best, let me get this laser pointer here. The best journal within the realms of science is this journal, Nature. In their Innovations In section, which is a section that is written, usually it's written by an expert, but to explain.
You're going to love this. This is really good. I mean, he just kills it. I can't say it better than him. I think you're muted, John. Are you talking, John?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was.
Oh, sorry, man. I do
the,
that so much.
One of the interesting things I think he just mentioned there, and you alluded to this, Emery, of it's in all levels of academia. It's happening in all facets, different layers, different disciplines, cross-discipline, and people just aren't recognizing or accepting or don't want to acknowledge because it might come back and bite them in the butt the next time they're doing some hype.
Yep, that's exactly true.
Jamie, welcome to the stream. By the way, everybody, Jamie is on a full-scale tear with trying to apply your face to a variety of famous characters. Although I have to say, Jamie, the one with me as the King of Persia from 300 is pretty epic.
Yeah, you could at least use the part where he says, "For the glory."
Yeah, that was
that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, I got some entertainment. I may have to play that later on. Okay, here we go. Well, next one.
Explain a scientific concept, not to the layperson, but to people who read Nature, people who are scientifically, are scientists themselves, but they may not work specifically in that area. An article was written, "How Did Life Begin? Untangling the Origin of Organisms Will Require Experiments at the Tiniest Scales and Observations at the Vastest." Now, this was written by Jack Szostak. Who is Jack Szostak? First of all, I just want to give a shout out for Jack. He is a nice man. He's a professor of genetics at Harvard Medical School, so we're talking about the best folks, and one of the recipients of the 2009 Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine. So this was written by a Nobel Prize winner. This is a top guy. He's a biologist, a professor of genetics. And this was published in May 2018. This is what's being put out there to teach scientifically literate people about how did life begin. This is what has been written. How Did Life Begin by Nobel laureate Jack Szostak, Nature 2018. He writes, "The early atmosphere had no oxygen. It consisted mainly of nitrogen and carbon dioxide with smaller amounts of hydrogen, water, and methane." Well, remember, in one of the former videos, we read an article where they're suggesting the Earth had plenty of oxygen. So there's some confusion on that point. He went on. "Lightning, asteroid impacts, and ultraviolet light from the sun acted on the atmosphere to generate hydrogen cyanide, a compound of hydrogen, carbon, and nitrogen. Raining into volcanic or crater lakes, the cyanide reacted with iron brought up by water circulating through the rocks. The resulting iron cyanide compounds accumulated over time, building up into a concentrated stew of reactive chemicals. Life, as we know it, requires RNA. Some scientists believe that RNA emerged directly from these reactive chemicals, nudged along by dynamic forces in the environment. That is utterly ridiculous."
I know, I love it. I just laugh all the way through. I just crack up all the way through this.
Just for the record, Tor just called a Nobel Prize winner ridiculous.
He did.
Yeah, well, you wait and see why. He explained
I know why.
great detail.
Well,
Oh, did you? Okay, all right, yeah.
Tor isn't playing games. He's done with this garbage.
well, absolutely, and I think and it's interesting. The irony for me is that the points that Dr. Tour was just making, the ultraviolet, the oxygen problem, all these different things. There's like 17, 18 different like recognized paradoxes that haven't been explained, and people. I mean, just last night in the after show we did, Dr. Carter, Dr. James Carter, biochemist. He was on the stream. He's actually in the side chat right now, and he discussed some of these things. He and Dr. Hayes and Dr. Cy Gart and Fuzz Rana. I mean, even people who are old Earth creationists, but the biochemists. I mean, they're different. Dr. Stadler, he's young Earth, but I mean, different folks. Dr. Change Tan, like they go through in great detail. And they're like, this is basic stuff. Like we know this. Like this stuff shouldn't be controversial in terms of like you need to account for these types of things because they're well recognized concepts in biology. Like nobody disputes, nobody that has any level of expertise, like a Dr. Carter, for example, as a PhD biochemist, like we know this to be a problem. How does it get glossed over so much in these papers? And I think it's kind of the point that Dr. Tour is making too, of like, hang on, you're insulting your own level of expertise if you want to claim that we don't have to account for this stuff. Because unlike the layman who's being convinced and having this stuff glossed over for them in relation to the media and even in researchers themselves, but like the layman doesn't necessarily have the knowledge to be able to call you out, but I do, and you guys should too. How are you not calling out your own peers? You claim that all this stuff is peer reviewed. Well, where are the peer reviews? Are you guys incompetent? And I obviously didn't say it that directly, but that's kind of the vibe I get from them. Like, where are you jokers on actually being what you claim to be? Emery, I know since you're in academia right now, does that point I just made, does that kind of resonate with you at all?
To an extent, I think a lot of people in academia, like I think a lot of the peer review stuff that goes on is basically just rubber stamp. Like Tor, I think, talks about this. I don't know if it's in this video, but he talks about he gets tons and tons of peer review requests every year, and he has to turn most of them down. Otherwise, he wouldn't do anything else. And that's probably true.
Yeah, he said he wouldn't be able to live his life.
Yeah, exactly. So that I think that's a common problem for a lot of people in academia. They get a lot of peer review requests, and then they're teaching and they're doing their own research. And in Tor's case, he's doing other stuff besides that. So peer review kind of becomes this thing where everybody's kind of expected to do some peer reviewing, and most people don't get paid for it most of the time. So it kind of gets shoved to the back burner, and then people don't necessarily do a thorough job, particularly if they aren't necessarily completely familiar with the way the experiment was set up. And so stuff gets through, and some people just rubber stamp. Like if they recognize, oh, this is my buddy was telling me about this experiment he was doing. This is his paper. Oh, this is good.
But he talks about that.
Or the alternative happens where some guy who is working in the same field sees, oh, this person over here that I don't like has made this big advancement. Nope. I'm going to find problems with this thing. I'm going to find misspelled words and tell him he's got to fix those, and just, slow the paper down as much as possible. So that one of two things can happen. Either A, I can plagiarize it and publish it in another journal, which happens fairly frequently. Or B, I can take his experiment, do it myself, and see what happens with it. And so peer review, it gets touted like it's this perfect arbiter that cleans up everything. It doesn't. All it does is protect establishment thought. That's all it does.
Yeah. And also he points out very efficiently when he pulls out that printout of just one section of the citation that he was reading, and he showed all the notes, the huge amount of notes that he put on this thing. It just blows your mind. You think this guy is one of the best in the world, the top 5 in the world, I'd say, and he has to. It's complicated for him to work it out. So how can these peer reviewers work out if it's hard to work out their method and what they did? And he goes through, does all these notes and works it all out. He said it takes him a long time and a lot of effort and work. So I mean, if it takes this guy a lot of effort and work to go through all that jargon, that scientific jargon that they put in there, they do that to bamboozle the reviewers, because I'm sure that it's going, and a lot of that's going over the reviewers' heads, just like you said. You just confirmed
Well, I think that's partially true. Like, I think there are some reviewers who are really good and they put the time in and they work really, really hard. But I think in some cases it's not necessarily even going over their head. It's just they don't care. It's a low.
Oh yeah.
It's a low. It's a low priority for them because they've got their own research, which is what's going to advance their career. Reviewing somebody else's paper is not going to advance their career, unless they can learn something from it, which they might sometimes. But so and they've got families, they've got kids, they've got teaching responsibilities. So it's just low priority. And because it's low priority, it's not always done really well, or it's put off to the last minute and then done in a hurry, or, whatever. And what it ends up doing is basically, if you're a young researcher with a groundbreaking idea, people don't like having their ideas challenged. Darwin actually got away with saying this. He basically said, in his first edition of his book, he said basically, I don't think I'm going to convince all these older guys who have been studying this for a long time. So I'm going to appeal to the young people. I'm going to appeal directly to the young people and say, hey guys, look at this. This is a good opportunity for you to advance your careers by jumping on this bandwagon. And I think that's why most scientific revolutions take decades, not a couple of months or a couple of years, because the older folks do not want to, throw away something they put their whole life into. And so there's a lot of issues with peer review, and it just basically acts as a gatekeeper. That's all it really works out for. And this is true across the board. Like, this isn't just true of evolutionists. This is true in creationist thought too. There's some gatekeeping that goes on, because people have a natural human tendency not to want to be wrong. And if you put out a paper that challenges an accepted thought process on a particular topic, you can expect it to be heavily challenged, shall we say.
Well, do you know what backs you up? What backs you up is that a guy was going to pay $250,000 for a footprint, a sandal print with this. You can see the stitching in the sandals, and this person with this a fossilized sandal print had stood on a trilobite. And the evolutionist was going to buy it. Don Patton gives the reference in his videos, Dr. Don Patton, and of the guy, and he said he was going to pay him $250,000 because he prints out books, evolution textbooks, and he makes a fortune out of doing that. And he said, what are you going to do with it? And he said, I'm going to smash it. So he's going to give him $250,000 for it and smash it. And he said, why are you going to smash it? He said, because it destroys my life's work.
I mean, again, that does not surprise me. That's anecdotal. I don't want to put too much weight on that because, again, it's anecdotal. I don't have a whole lot of evidence to back it up, but it's consistent with the way they behave.
Well, yeah, I agree with you that in that context it's anecdotal. And let's jump on to the next segment here from Dr. Tour. But I agree that it's anecdotal. However, let's just use basic common sense. If you're a deep time paleontologist
making millions of dollars from printing out books, if
that is false, your entire life's work is literally negated in one fell swoop.
Your millions of dollars a year is gone.
Right. And I think oftentimes for folks, especially quote unquote laymen, right, we don't think about, I'll say the average person doesn't think about like, oh, my professional identity is running around playing with bones and dirt, right? And coming up with different things. Like, nobody thinks about that as their profession and like their job, right? That's hard for the average person to like even consider, right? Hang on, you do what? Like we see it in the movies and stuff, but like actually having that be who you are and how you make your living and all that kind of stuff. And you got to think about this. And this applies to evolutionary biologists. It applies to all sorts of different facets, but if you disprove yourself, right, or you accept a challenge to the status quo, which by default accomplishes that negation, then you're out of a job. Like, you no longer have an income, a justifiable income anyway, in terms of following it at least down the same train of thought and the same paradigm. And it's like You're a insert profession. You're a lawyer, and then somebody comes along and is like, yeah, your whole JD, yeah, that's not how things actually work. And
Ashley phosphate beds, jaws, human jawbone thrown in river. Like it happens a lot. They often find parrots. Doctor, what's his name? That TV series, I can't remember his name. He gets scientists to admit, a head of a university, that they find, or one of the top guys, that they find parrot fossils regularly with things like T-Rex and dinosaurs all the time. They just throw them aside, or a lot of them don't recognize what it is and don't bother to chip it out, and they don't want to know because it screws their timeline up.
Yep.
So
Okay.
they're admitting this stuff.
Yes, yeah. Well, they are, absolutely. Okay, let's go on to this next segment.
I don't know what scientists believe, but I don't. There is no scientific evidence. Nothing. Where you can take iron cyanide and some lightning and form an iron and form RNA. I don't know scientists that believe that, but certainly there's no science that ever suggests that. And we don't even use these terms since they're chemically nudged along by dynamic forces in the environment. That's utterly ridiculous. Nucleotides, the building blocks of RNA, eventually formed, then joined together to make strands of RNA. Some stages in this process are still not well understood. You can underscore that. Nucleotides have never been shown to form that way. Nucleotides are really hard. Remember, you got to have a pentose sugar. We go through the prebiotic formation of sugars. Nobody knows how those form. Then you have to have the base. That's a little bit easier to think of how that might have formed. The sugar is a killer. And then they have them hook up. How do they hook up? They don't just spontaneously hook up. And how do they stay together? I mean, isn't RNA pretty unstable? And strands of RNA, yeah, you can get strands of RNA, but there has to be codons in it. There has to be information encoded in it. If you have a random box of letters and you start sticking those letters together in random order, there's no information transferred. You have to have them spelling out words. You have to have what are called codons, which we'll learn about. We'll cover codons. Just hooking together doesn't make any intelligible RNA. It is ribonucleic acid, I'll give you that, but there's no information stored in it. The information is a mystery. Once RNA was made, so now all of a sudden we've got RNA, some strands of it became enclosed within tiny vesicles formed by the spontaneous assembly of fatty acid lipids in the membranes. Where did the fatty acids form? How did those spontaneously form? Boy, I'd love to see that chemistry from methane. And then they formed membranes, creating the first protocells. As the membranes incorporated more fatty acids, they grew and divided. At the same time, internal chemical reactions drove replication of the encapsulated RNA. That's really fanciful. It really is. So how did life begin? So here's what he writes in his article in Nature 2018. Quote, today, the question of how chemistry on the infant Earth gave rise to RNA and RNA-based cells is the central quest in origin of life research. Some scientists think that life originally used simpler molecules and only later evolved RNA. Other researchers, however, are tackling the origin of RNA head-on, and exciting new ideas are revolutionizing the once quiet backwater of chemical research. Favored geochemical scenarios involved volcanic regions or impact craters with complex organic chemistry, multiple sources of energy, dynamic light, dark, hot, cold, wet, dry cycles. Strikingly, many of the chemical intermediates on the way to RNA crystallize out of reaction mixtures, self-purifying and potentially accumulating on the early Earth as organic minerals, reservoirs of materials waiting to come to life when conditions change. Assuming the key problem is solved, how did we assume that? We still need to understand how RNA was replicated within the first primitive cells. Researchers are just beginning to identify the sources of chemical energy that could enable the RNA to copy itself. But much remains to be done. If these hurdles can be overcome, we may be able to build replicating, evolving RNA-based cells in the laboratory, recapitulating a possible route to the origin of life. There is so much speculation in here.
So that segment right there really just kind of encapsulates the sheer assumption, the required level of assumption in order to go down the rabbit hole of origin of life research. And I mean,
yeah,
it really is amazing. Like each one of those points. And again, that's not Dr. Tour making it up. That's directly from Shostak, right? I tell you what, though, that moment where Dr. Tour kind of pauses for a second, and he's like, "What?" It's kind of, if that was me, it'd be like raise the eyebrow and be like, "What? What did you just say?" Like he's like, "Man, that's amazing that we managed to just solve all those problems." Oh wait, we haven't solved any of this. You don't have the answer to this. You're just assuming that at some point it will, in spite of all of the evidence that solving this is getting. The chances of solving this are getting further and further away, not closer and closer. It's very ironic.
Yeah, and this is the stuff that he's debunking. This is why I love it so much. This is the stuff that people like Erica and all those other like Godless Engineer and that, they snicker at us behind our backs because these citations that he debunks in this series that he's got. I can't wait for the whole 13, and I'll watch them over again. But these are the ones that they snigger at us and think that they know it all and they've got it all worked out, and these are the ones that they show. He gets worse and worse as this goes on, and he shows you it blows your mind. It gets worse. It's crazy.
Right, and the one thing I say before it, see if Emery or Jamie has anything they want to add, is that last point about self-replicating and evolving RNA strands. I've talked about this with Dr. Carter. I've heard Dr. Hayes talk about this. I've heard Origin of Life researchers talk about this. I've heard all sorts of chemists. Dr. Stadler, or Dr. James Tan talked about it. Dr. Stadler covered it in one of the interviews that we had with him over on SFT's channel. When they do get self-replicating RNA strands, which they've artificially created, number one, when they get to that point and they get them to start replicating, they end up getting shorter, not longer. This is a key statement of fact. The shorter it gets shorter, it loses. Number one, you don't even have like the sequential information yet anyway. But let's say even if you did, without all of the other transcription components that are necessary in like modern cells as we see them, you would actually end up with losing information. So not evolving and gaining. So problem, anyone? Just saying. And okay, before I press play, Emery or Jamie, you got anything you want to add?
I think you covered that pretty well there.
I'm good. Go ahead.
I won't even require you to do this on an early Earth. Try doing this in a laboratory. And if this thing were possible on an early Earth, why can't anybody get close to this? Not even close. Not even close. Not even make the building blocks to the building blocks to get close to this. We're going to see this in this series of videos. But that's a lot of hype. That's a lot of hype. And then he shows Jack Sostek in his article. He shows this picture as well. Now Jack is a nice man, and he is a tremendous biologist.
This is awesome.
He is believed into this hype that was put forth by his synthetic chemist colleagues, because he puts out this picture, and I've talked to him about this, and he said that this was transcribed from an earlier article by an artist, so shouldn't put much stock in it. But let me show you what was shown. He says that these are simple sugars. If you look at his coding here, remember there are some conventions in writing molecules. The only thing that you don't have to include the hydrogen atoms on are carbons, and that's when the carbons have a bend in a stick configuration. But even if we say that, then if you're not going to include the hydrogens, you at least have to show the double bonds, of which he doesn't show any. So he's got 1, 2, 3 propane triol here. He says that this is a simple sugar. It is not. This is ethylene glycol. It is not a simple sugar. But even if you did have an aldehyde here, it still would not be a simple sugar. These are cyanide derivatives. Cyanide derivatives, iron cyanide derivatives, are really robust compounds, and there's very little free cyanide in solution. That mixed with phosphate, and you got an RNA nucleotide. And how did that happen? UV light from above and heat below. UV light drove the conversion of cyanides into simple sugars. Nobody knows how that happens. We have no evidence for that. Phosphate catalyzed chemical reactions between sugars and cyanide derivatives. I don't know of evidence for that. Maybe there is. It'd be great to have a reference on that. In the presence of UV light and phosphate, RNA nucleotides were formed. That does not happen. Just does not happen. You can't mix these chemicals under any conditions and get this that anyone knows about. This is called RNA. It's not really RNA, because for RNA, you have to have R being ribose. Ribose. That means that you have to have the stereochemistry of ribose. There's no stereochemistry shown on that molecule. None whatsoever. So that can't be ribose. That you want to call that a pentose sugar, fine, but that's not ribose. For ribose, you have to have stereochemistry, and then you have your base here. All right. So there's a lot of things wrong with this, but people believe Jack Sostek, and this gets people confused. Now, if you say,
So
let him. Okay, sorry, you've already seen this, haven't you, John?
no, I haven't seen this one yet.
Oh, haven't you? Oh, because you might want to let him go through this thing, or have a quick word, and then let him go through this thing, and then have another word after he goes through this thing he's showing on the screen now, because it's just
the
awesome.
only thing I was going to say about that, when he was showing on the simple sugars, the irony for me on that was from the layman's perspective, right? Oh, there's like 3 balls and some sticks in between it. That can't be that complicated. And then Dr. Tour's like, that's not simple. That's not a simple compound, right? And that's the one that visually, at least, looks like it would be the most simple, right? And then when he start talking about what's being called RNA, he's like, it's not RNA. And that looks complicated, right? I'm talking from just the visual representation standpoint. You would think, oh, that must be complicated. Look at all those connections and all those different pieces and parts. And he's like, yeah, but that's not actually what you have to have. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Was one of the problems the fact that he didn't, that the picture didn't show the way that they were supposed to be like
yeah, come together bit by
right?
bit.
Well, isn't there like chirality or something that's supposed to that
Homochirality.
Okay.
Oh no, yeah. Oh no,
no. The point that Dr. Tor was making, he wasn't even talking about the chirality problem. Like that's a whole nother layer. He's saying that what is being represented as RNA isn't actually RNA.
Yeah, but he's also
so the chirality problem isn't even in question yet. It's like you're not even.
No, that's right.
You're not even at the point where chirality has to be accounted for. is a kind of point he was making. Okay, let's get back to it. Let's get back to this with Sutherland.
Yeah, this is good.
He's thinking if he worked with Sutherland. So Sutherland, you want to see that molecule that he's showing in that other structure? So that's here. Right, that's what he's trying to show, is a molecule like this. Well, how did this happen? Did he just take some cyanide and some simple sugars and get this? No. Did he take ethylene glycol and 1,2,3-propane triol and get this? No. Look at all the steps involved. So this entire shaded region, this shaded region here, you had to go from these small molecules all the way along. All of these steps involved. You got a dozen steps, and some of this came in from other steps down here, came into this shaded region from other steps over here, come into this. And all of these steps involved, it's not homochiral, it is racemic. So without homochirality, we don't know where the homochirality came from. It is racemic. He has relative stereochemical control, but this is what he's got here. How does this form from what Sostek puts forth? So here's the article that he's referring to, but it's much more complex than he projects. Try to do all of this in a prebiotic scenario is not easy. We'll look at some of Sutherland's work. Sutherland's a great organic chemist. Jack Sostek, being a biologist, seems to have misunderstood it and thereby oversimplified what was going on here. It's not just taking, as he had shown, a couple of small molecules with heat and light, and poof, you get this. That's not how chemistry works. There are a lot of steps in here. A lot of steps involved, and I'll show you some of the other hidden secrets as to what they do to make this look like it could work. So just take one of the steps of Sostek's steps involved in here. So you got to make 1,2,3-propane triol, which was this molecule that Sostek was referencing, and he uses it from this dihydroxyacetone. All right, so think about doing this on a prebiotic earth. Dihydroxyacetone, 8 milligrams, and this sodium hydrogen phosphate, 45 milligrams, were dissolved in water, D2O because they're going to be doing NMR. So dissolved in water, and the resultant solution was degassed for 15 minutes. How are you going to degas on an early Earth? To do degassing, you need a vacuum pump. No vacuum pumps on early Earth. There was an atmosphere. How are you going to just make the atmosphere go away? This is supposed to be a prebiotically relevant synthesis. Then sodium hydrogen sulfide, 60 milligrams, was added, and the solution turned yellow. When the sodium hydrogen sulfide was completely dissolved, the pH was adjusted to 7 using degassed sodium hydroxide HCl. Oh, there's another degassing step. And how convenient to adjust the pH all of a sudden at that point. You would have had to have a really smart early Earth, having all these reagents ready, just ready. The solution was then transferred to a quartz tube containing copper cyanide and immediately sealed, whereupon a black precipitate formed. Immediately sealed. So it immediately goes into a vessel, a quartz tube, and then is immediately sealed with a flame. Boom, you seal that thing off. So you need a torch to seal that thing off. Or maybe it was a screw cap Teflon seal, immediately sealed. And this is hard to do. This is really hard to do, even in a lab. How do you do this on an early Earth? This is supposed to be a prebiotically relevant synthesis, not a modern synthesis. The tube was placed in a bayonet reactor. That is a box that has UV lights all inside it, and you stick your sample all surrounded by UV light, and then irradiated for 6 hours. Where are you going to get that intensity of UV light? Okay, let's say UV light was abundant on early Earth. If that's the case, then the reactions, the chemicals you make are decomposing 1,000 times faster when you have UV light like that. After this time, an aliquot was removed and examined by proton NMR, after which time a known amount of calcium formate to serve as an internal standard was added, and they took this spectrum. So when they take the spectrum, this is what they want to make. This is an authentic sample that they buy. This is what it looks like in NMR. This is what they got. Look at all these other compounds. Look at how dirty that reaction mixture is. So of the desired compound, glycerol was obtained in 34% yield. So they got glycerol. That's the 1,2,3-propane triol. Another name for that is glycerol or glycerin. And so that compound was in 34% yield. So you got a bunch of other compounds. And so then they could pump on it. If you put a vacuum pump, a lot of these volatile compounds will come off. You're still left with these, but you're going to lose some of your propane triol as well. But if you adjust the pressure on your vacuum pump, you can do that. You couldn't do that on an early Earth because there are no vacuum pumps. Then did they take this mixture and bring it on to the next step? No. They
just let it go for a little while longer, and then we'll stop it.
Man, I tell you what,
that's funny. That's awesome, yeah. He just killed it.
This stuff just cracks me up. And I've said this in multiple streams since he started this. Well, since this was announced, and then now that it's actually going on. Origin of Life researchers hate wannabe Professor Dave right now because Dr. Tour is now is now publicly, for the access to the masses, reviewing their papers. Not the ones, not wannabe Dave's. Shostak, Sutherland. Like, he's reviewing their chemistry and their abstracts and their assertions. So they're now getting peer reviewed. Oh, they're getting peer reviewed publicly. And I mean, Emery,
that's why I'm laughing.
Emery, I'd love your thoughts on that premise. Would you say it's reasonable that the individuals who throughout this 13 episode series are going to be getting their papers reviewed by Dr. Tour? Do you think that, they may not know about this going on right now, but when they find out, what do you think the odds of them being pissed off at Wannabe Dave are?
Well, this honestly is going to depend on how intellectually honest the researcher is. Because if they legitimately think that they're actually making progress, they're going to be mad at Tor. But if they realize that they've been lying to the public for the last 60 years and nobody said anything about it, essentially, until Dave decided he was going to make a video and attack Tor, at which point Tor decided he was going to knock Dave into next Christmas, then they'll be mad at Dave more than Tor. Although they'll still be upset with Tor, because Tor is basically Dr. Carter. Yes, that's true. But they'll be mad at Tor, but they'll also be mad at publicly. They'll come out and be mad at Tor. Privately, they will be very angry with Dave for putting them in the position where their nonsense that they've been spewing for the last X number of years, depending on the researcher, is now being publicly peer reviewed in ways that the layperson can sit there and understand if he thinks about it. And that isn't going to go well, because most people are going to figure out real quick that if we don't have origin of life, we don't have evolution, which is just not, which is going to make the entire evolutionary biology field struggle even more than it already is. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents. I mean, a lot of this stuff, again, going back to the peer review concept, should never have made peer review. It should have been burned in a fire before it ever got anywhere close to going through peer review. But again, because peer review has a questionable success rate to begin with, it's getting through. And I know Tor says that like some of this stuff would never get published in other fields. Yes, it would. Yes, it would. It would still get published, because the same lazy, sinful people peer review in those fields as peer review in the origin of life fields. There's a lot of crank science out there that passes peer review.
Well, but hey, everything we talk about is pseudoscience. Come on now.
Well,
there was a citation on Pokemon that got peer reviewed and passed.
Okay, that one I don't use that as an example, because that was sent to what is known as a predatory journal, which basically the authors have to pay to publish, and they have to pay to publish in some other journals too, like some actual reputable journals. But in this one, they have to pay to publish, and there's basically no turnaround time on the peer review of the manuscript. So they'll send a manuscript in, and within 24 to 48 hours, the editor will go back and go, "Yeah, it's accepted. We're good to go." And basically, they're just taking the author's money so that they can publish. So that one I wouldn't use, but there is plenty of actual retractions from actual journals that are actual garbage.
Yeah, like guys that have actually faked science too. There's quite a few of them as well, because there's a lot of fame and money involved, and there's a lot of fakes out there.
All right,
as
guys.
Well.
Before we keep going on, I know Tony just joined us, and I'm sure he is something he wants to drop in. So Tony, anything you want to add real quick before we press play?
Yeah, great stuff. I'm looking forward to the more episodes to come, and some of the designed equipment he's going to talk about too, like he had mentioned the vacuum pumps and some of the manipulated reagents and all the purification processes. So yeah, looking forward to it.
And they buy these materials.
Right.
They buy them fully. Almost these chemicals are like that many steps have already been, skipped just to buy these, molecules, already formed molecules. And some of these molecules have been taken straight from nature. They're getting molecules from nature, mixing them together with a couple of sugars or whatever, or a sugar, and then it makes a protein ball that's permeable. And they go, look, we've just made a cell that,
Yeah, and then print the paper and hype it up and everything else.
But if you read the paper and you tried to work it out, you would be able to work it out. Like, you look at the notes he puts on this thing. It's like, it's crazy.
And then we'll get it peer reviewed by a bunch of atheists, and they'll publish it and okay it. And yep, we did it.
All right, look, guys, let's keep going. Oh crap! I just went back to the beginning. Where was I? Crap, where was I?
Doesn't matter. It's all good. Oh, that looks familiar.
Completely dissolved. The pH was adjusted
it was
to
just
7
past
using
this.
degas sodium hydroxide.
Yeah.
I'm right here.
Okay. Or maybe it was a screw cap Teflon seal.
That's it.
Seal.
You got it.
And this is hard to do. This is really hard to do, even in a lab. How do you do this on an early Earth? This is supposed to be a prebiotically relevant synthesis, not a modern synthesis. The tube was placed in a Rayonet reactor. That is a box that has UV lights all inside it, and you stick your sample all surrounded by UV light, and then irradiated for 6 hours. Where are you going to get that intensity of UV light? Okay, let's say UV light was abundant on early Earth. If that's the case, then the reactions, the chemicals you make are decomposing 1,000 times faster when you have UV light like that. After this time, an aliquot was removed and examined by Proton and Amar, after which time a known amount of calcium formate to serve as an internal standard was added, and they took this spectrum. So when they take the spectrum, this is what they want to make. This is an authentic sample that they buy. This is what it looks like in NMR. This is what they got. Look at all these other compounds. Look at how dirty that reaction mixture is. So of the desired compound, glycerol was obtained in 34% yield. So they got glycerol. That's the 1,2,3-propane triol. Another name for that is glycerol or glycerin. And so that compound was in 34% yield. So you got a bunch of other compounds. And so then they could pump on it. If you put a vacuum pump, a lot of these volatile compounds will come off. You're still left with these, but you're going to lose some of your propane triol as well. But if you adjust the pressure on your vacuum pump, you can do that. You couldn't do that on an early Earth because there are no vacuum pumps. Then did they take this mixture and bring it on to the next step? No, they didn't. No. You buy an authentic version of glycerol, and you carry that on. That's not how normal synthesis is done in a laboratory. What you make has to be carried on. You can't just buy the stuff new. If you do, it's called a relay synthesis, and it exposes that you have a problem with your mass transfer. Well, that's the thing that these origin of life researchers do over and over again. We'll get more into that. All right, then if you look at the exquisite exactness in his synthetic protocols. So he wrote this paper in Nature Chemistry, which is probably the best chemistry journal out there. Nature is the best scientific journal. This is the best chemistry journal out there. And here's what he wrote when he was writing about this. So when you read the procedures, the precise protocols by Sutherland's suggested prebiotic-like precursors, one captures the high-level sophistication, expert synthetic prowess, and remarkable ingenuity of the researchers. Some reactions were conveniently run at room temperature, some at 60 degrees, some at 100 degrees, then washed with ice-cold water. Often the molecules were prepared by these prebiotic routes were not used, but they had to be made more cleanly and in larger scale using purely synthetic methods and organic solvents such as Lawson's reagent and tetrahydrofuran to, quote, simply to simplify the handling procedures, unquote. Just-in-time and precise order of addition protocols were used over and over again. One sees precise pH adjustments through the syntheses using of ion exchange resins and separations from the reaction mixtures because the proceeding without separations would have destroyed the carefully prepared products. Here's an example. The preparation of cyanoacetylene on copper 1 was suggested as a way to conveniently prepare and store it for use when needed. Copper chloride was mixed with potassium chloride to generate the Newland catalyst at 70 degrees. Then a separately generated source of acetylene gas was prepared from calcium carbide and water. So you just happen to be dripping calcium. You found some calcium carbide and water drips on it. This is all happening under a rock or in a cave somewhere. And then that gas bubbles through this newly prepared Newland catalyst to prepare acrylonitrile, which is an unstable molecule that needs proper isolation and storage to inhibit its polymerization really, really rapidly, which was then treated with potassium cyanide for 1 hour, then 5 equivalents of ammonia in a 13-molar ammonium solution adjusted to pH 9. How convenient. With sodium hydroxide to generate the desired aminopropionitrile. All of the reactions were executed in separate clean vessels and properly isolated prior to proceeding to the next reaction. This is just a sampling of the preparations that are difficult for even the most skilled synthetic chemists to prepare. Very simple precursors to a few of the many molecules within the building block class, and the precursors were racemic if they bore any possible stereoisomerism. This is just the very basic part of the top left of that synthesis. This is just one of the steps. You had to have this over and over again and all these steps to make this nucleotide. Even higher level extrapolations were written about in the same article. That, quote, all cellular subsystems could have arisen simultaneously through common chemistry has raised the level of suppositions from mere molecule types to now complex cellular subsystems where molecules are working in concert toward a common functional goal. This is what was written, that all the cellular subsystems could have arisen simultaneously through common chemistry. That's not what he showed. That is pure and utter speculation. I work in nanosystems where you try to put molecules together to work in concert together. It is so hard. He says all the subsystems of the cell could have arisen simultaneously through common chemistry. What's he talking about? What common chemistry? like a gazillion different reactions he uses, and vacuum pumps and Raynet reactors, and all the subsystems of a cell? That's the hype I'm talking about. That shouldn't be there. That's the hype coming from the researchers themselves. And this guy is a great chemist. Sutherland is a great chemist, but it's this hype that hurts the field.
So the point he was making, about how with the subsystems and, when they're trying to create things, how hard it is. That's why the point he's making there, and I think anybody who's ever seen his discussion on like creating the nano race cars, the molecular race cars, and like how complicated it was, all the processes. I think it was just their lab notebook of all the steps was 382 single, like no double spacing, right? It was 382 pages of instructions on what they had to do to create a very simplistic nano car. And so it's why wannabe Dave saying
and that's only made out of a few atoms too. That's not made out of very many atoms. The smallest molecule in the human body is made out of 50,000 atoms. So the molecules he's making are much simpler.
Right, but wannabe Dave,
and 300 pages,
who repeatedly claims that Dr. Tour, as a synthetic organic chemist, doesn't understand what is required to happen. And it's like, right. So you're talking about the guy who literally does
an understatement.
Who does the proverbial forces molecules to do things which aren't natural. And Emery, do you happen to know who it was that said that? I know that was something to that effect. There's a chemistry, like synthetic chemistry is getting molecules to do what is not natural. Something to that effect.
No, that would probably be Dr. Carter probably knows that. I do my best to avoid chemistry. That was by far my worst science subject when I was in college. So I stay out of chemistry where I can. But I mean, even just like going back to the diagram of the RNA, like I had to memorize what RNA looks like back in a long time ago, and I can tell you that ain't RNA. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I had to memorize that. I still remember what that looks like. That's not RNA.
But Dr. Tour himself explained those nanocars. He said that these nanocars are a certain amount of atoms. He said how many atoms? It wasn't very many. And he said the smallest molecule in the human body is about 50,000 atoms. So if it takes 300 pages of steps to make something that's like he says is thousands of times simpler than the simplest molecule in the human body, then how many steps do you reckon it'd take? How much a page of books would it take to probably 1,000 books to make the steps to do that one simple molecule, the simplest molecule in the human body? So
it doesn't take any of that. It just takes DNA. The acid that's like Diet Coke.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
right, yeah.
Well, and just for purposes of maintaining fair use and whatnot.
But it is not a code. It's a chemical. It's deoxyribonucleic acid. It's an acid. I don't understand why you think it's a code. DNA is no more of a code than Diet Coke and regular Coke.
That honestly will never, ever lose.
That's never going to die. He'll never live that down.
Well, and here's the irony. As a sidebar for everybody, for people who have been listening since the beginning, when I was talking about like explaining how my whole interaction with Godless Engineer ended up happening. So I had actually decided to let him go. Like I hadn't been thinking about him, like whatever. Right? What actually got me to, because he never responds. So I did a full like 25-minute response video to him, like got into great details and stuff. He never responded. What actually got me to go after him again, and what ultimately catalyzed and turned into the debate, was this. What I'm about to play is what actually got me. Like, I cannot believe he is still, after I've annihilated that stupid talking point, he's still using it.
One of the facets of Christianity is obsolete, specifically the fundamentalist view of Genesis. So let's see. Let me go through my. Oh, we started talking about genetic code, and what I have to say about genetic code is that we can interpret it as genetic code, like as code, as information. But inherently, DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. It's a chemical. This chemical reacts with certain other chemicals in various systems in order to produce different proteins. This is akin to like Diet Coke and regular Coke. I wouldn't say that Diet Coke inherently contains any kind of useful information just because it has a chemical code behind it. The change between Diet Coke and regular Coke doesn't prove anything about the existence of God. So I would just caution the use of genetic code as information and
Man, you can't make this stuff
Actually,
up, man. You can't make this stuff up.
Carbohydrates are more complicated than DNA. Way more complicated and store way more information. Carbohydrates are really, really complicated. James Tour says it himself.
That's true.
And he's saying that it's no more complicated than...
Emery was trying to say that you talked over. What were you saying, Emery?
Yeah, but I
was just asking.
Go
John, can you please shut him up so I can actually talk?
Mate, I haven't been able to say a full sentence. Like, I've just been
John,
jumping in and making the odd comment here and there. I'm not... So you don't have to speak like that. You know what I mean?
Jason,
I'll make a comment here and...
Let's not have conflict, guys. No conflict. Emery, please come back in. No conflict, guys. We're having a good time, and we're going over Dr. Tour stuff. Let's not...
He talks for a long time, mate. You look how long he's talking.
Jason, we're not having conflict tonight. Don't do this. All right, we're going to get back into the... Listen to Dr. Tour.
That brings these primordial soup misconceptions. How close have researchers come to an artificial cell? Well, in November 2018, not too long ago, biologists, it says, this is written in Science, the best journal for all of scientific reports in the United States, Science, the second best in the world, maybe second only to Nature. They wrote an article was written, biologists create the most lifelike artificial cells. Oh, I want to see that. They've created the most let's see how lifelike these cells can be. And they're citing from this article, which came out in Nature Communications, another great journal, called Communication and Quorum Sensing in a Non-Living Mimics of Eukaryotic Cells by Neil Devaraj. And so let's see what they did here. So semi-porous microcapsules made of plastic from acrylate polymerization. So these are microcapsules. You go into a fabrication facility and you make these semi-porous plastic beads containing clay. Were prepared using modern microfluidic techniques that are done with fabrication devices. These are machines that fabricate things. Clay has a high affinity for binding DNA. Because clay has positive charges. So when DNA, which has negative charges, was then added to the solution, it diffuses through the semi-porous plastic microcapsules and it sticks to the clay. Where did he get the DNA? He bought it. Where did the manufacturer get the DNA? They isolated it from natural compounds. And so that binds to the clay. The requisite ribosomes, mRNA, enzymes, and reagents were similarly purchased or extracted from living systems, added to the medium, and permitted to diffuse into the plastic capsule. So you buy all the components of a cell. But that's what they did. They certainly didn't make this from the bottom up. The expected chemical reactions ensued, resulting in protein synthesis. The newly formed proteins could diffuse out of the plastic microcapsules to other nearby semi-porous plastic microcapsules. The diffusion between the nearby plastic microcapsules was termed quorum sensing. Quorum sensing. That's a really sophisticated term. This is just natural diffusion. The chemistry of the exogenously added reagents will work regardless of the container, whether it be in a plastic semi-porous microcapsule, in a test tube, or in a large-scale industrial production tank. And one can buy a kit to do the same thing. It is far from the press-hyped claim of gene expression and communication rivaling that of living cells. There's no rivalry here. One might arguably agree that these are indeed the most lifelike artificial cells yet, but that only serves to underscore the point. Nobody has ever come close to generating the workings of life. You can buy kits that have all of these reagents. You mix them together and proteins will start getting synthesized. That's what these pieces do. They make proteins. This is doing biological events. It's not alive. It's just doing biological chemistry. Because you buy all the pieces, people didn't synthesize those pieces. They just took it from cells and they put it all in a kit. You can buy that. This is done in industry all the time to make proteins. This is done in the laboratories all the time. What he did is he put this in a porous microcapsule, and this is what's claimed as the most lifelike cells yet. Yeah, maybe this is it. Meaning that there's no life here. There's no life in those cells. It's just a chemical reaction. There's just a chemical reaction in that cell. That's it. And then it diffuses out. That's all that's been done. That's hype. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, all that was very interesting, and I think what's what even though Dr. Tor is kind of breaking that stuff down, the irony is that he could go off for 5 hours on just those couple points that he just covered. And is keeping it really relatively short, straight to the point, because there's so many other things he can go on. He can talk about. They're just like, really, you guys are ignoring this. It's crazy. Before we go on to the more hype by researchers, Jason, you got anything you want to add?
No.
No, I think he's probably going to talk about it, and we've all heard it. But they seem to like think each other have the answers that they need for the whole thing to be held together, and then it doesn't help when they oversimplify stuff to kind of make it sound more plausible.
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways they gloss over different portions of it, and we figured out this little dinky portion of it, so let's just ignore the other 99% that haven't been accounted for. Jason, you got for press play, you got anything you want to add, Jason?
No, go on. Nothing I want to add.
Oh, son of a man! I just did this again. Are you kidding me? We are right about here, I think.
I'm blowing the wind back in your sails there.
Yeah, maybe this is it. Meaning that there's no life here. There's no life in those cells. It's just a chemical reaction. There's just a chemical reaction in that cell. That's it. And then it diffuses out. That's all that's been done. That's hype. That's what I'm talking about. Here's some more hype. Redox and pH gradients drive amino acid synthesis in iron oxyhydroxide mineral systems. And so this is coming out. So this is work that's been done by some folks at different institutions, one of them being NASA. So here's a recent example of such a scenario of simple chemistry and the hyperbole that follows. In 2019, Laura Barg and co-workers at the NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the California Institute of Technology, and Oak Crest Institute of Science have simulated an undersea hydrothermal vent. Heating an aqueous solution of pyruvate to 70 degrees and introducing ammonia and iron hydroxides while limiting oxygen, they observed simple reduction and reductive amination to stereoscrambled lactate and alanine, respectively. So they took pyruvate, which they probably bought. I'm sure they bought it. I'm sure they didn't. They didn't make this from formaldehyde. So they buy pyruvate. They take it and they react it with ammonia, and they get a reductive amination. And so now you get racemic alanine, and then you just do a direct reduction of a carbonyl, and you get lactate. All right. Those are such simple reduction reactions that the chemistry is certain and therefore wholly unremarkable. Yet the authors write, quote, "This shows that aqueous, partially reducing iron mineral systems, which would have been common in earlier seafloor vent environments, could have facilitated synthesis and concentration of prebiotic organic molecules relevant for the emergence of life. It also suggests that geochemical gradients in the vent environments can drive product selectivity for prebiotic chemistry, perhaps leading to more complex organic reaction systems as these molecules continue to diffuse and react under different conditions within the gradients." Come on. This is like 1/100th the amazement of the Miller-Urey experiment in 1952. So 60 years later, 65 years later, they go ahead and do this reaction, and this is somehow remarkable, and they start saying that they talk about emergence of life. This is what I'm talking about. The NASA press office then had a field day with the results, titling their article, "NASA Study Reproduces Origin of Life on Ocean Floor." Oh! Further writing, quote, "Scientists have reproduced in the lab how the ingredients for life could have formed deep in the ocean 4 billion years ago. The results of this study offer clues how life started on Earth and where else in the cosmos we might find it." That is a lie. It's so wrong. It's terribly wrong. They offered no clues on the origin of life. In addition, this led to a blitzkrieg by the press that cut and pasted from the NASA press release. But the chemistry is less complex and less interesting than the 1952 Miller-Urey experiment. Yet it was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, a superb scientific journal. This underscores that journals themselves are complicit in continuing this sort of nonsensical experiment to be suggestive of life's origin. Unlike the far more sophisticated synthetic chemistry of the origin of life researchers like Sutherland, the work by NASA is nonsensically simple. So in that sense, much like the prebiotic Earth would have been. Aside from the artless 2019 NASA experiment, most origin of life researchers today put far more precision into their protocols to make more elaborate arrays of stereoscrambled intermediates. One could easily argue, therefore, that researchers are moving further from the heart of abiogenesis, since they are filling the protocols with the best of their intellectual training to coax molecules into the form that the researcher desires. Yet even with all the intellectual input, the origin of life researchers overcome few, if any, of the barriers noted above. All right, let's look at another one. Statistical physics of self-replication. So this was in the Journal of Chemical Physics by Jeremy England. He was at MIT at the time in the Department of Physics. Self-replication is a capacity common to every species of living things, and the simple physical intuition dictates that such a process must invariably be fueled by the production of entropy. Here he goes on and he undertakes some studies, and he ends up talking about the implications of this finding for bacterial cell division, as well as for prebiotic emergence of self-replicating nucleic acids. So here's the article that he wrote, and this was then picked up by the press, and here's what the press wrote. This is quoting Jeremy England. This is what he himself said in the press release that came out in Quantum magazine. And it was entitled A New Physics Theory of Life. Here's what Jeremy England himself said. You start with a random clump of atoms, and if you shine light on it for long enough, it should not be so surprising that you get a plant, England said. Well, let me tell you, shining light on atoms has been done a lot. All sorts of wavelengths of light, all sorts of electromagnetic radiation. A plant has never come out of just a pile of atoms, never been done. This is the thing that confuses people. This is like the primordial soup nonsense, that a plant comes out from a pile of atoms and light. This is the researcher himself saying this. This is the hype that I'm talking about, that gives people this primordial soup model in their mind.
Man, you can just tell that Dr. Tour can barely contain himself on just wanting to just go off on these people and just be like, how do you say this crap with a straight face? You know that's going through his mind of, like, you wrote this? You published this? Like, oh man, you know that's got to be what's going through his mind as he's trying to contain himself on and not just destroy them. But man, oh, so everybody, Jungle, the one and only Jungle Jargon has joined us. How are you doing, Jungle?
Hello. I was just thinking that the publishers themselves are probably kicking themselves.
Well, that's a very good point. Very good point of like, well, that's as I've said multiple times in this stream and others, like, I'm telling you, the Origin of Life researchers are pissed off at Wannabe Dave. You now have somebody that they can't ignore, or not ignore without it being obvious that they're refusing to even address the points being made by somebody who is top 50 chemists of the last century. Just saying. Jamie, you got anything you want to add, Jason?
Oh, they won't address them. They won't address any of the problems that he's pointed out because, you know, they know they're buying the chemicals fully formed. They're using vacuum pumps to vacuum the, you know, stuff off, you know, chemicals off and air off, and to preserve molecules and stop things from breaking down and help things along. And you know, they know they can't. There's nothing they can really come back with.
Well, that's a very good point. Jamie, before I press play, you got anything you want to add?
Yeah, this Jeremy England guy. He's sounds like a pretty smart dude. He let's see. It says he's actually an ordained rabbi, for one thing, who finds resonance between modern science and passages in the Hebrew Bible. You can find him on Sean Carroll's Mindscape show being interviewed. He looks pretty young, but he says, but the exact connection between living organisms and the flow of heat and entropy remains a topic of ongoing research. Jeremy England is a leader in this field, deriving connections between thermodynamic relationships and the process of life. Anyway, that's it.
All right. Oh man! Oh my goodness gracious! I cannot believe I just did that again. Son of a. All right, we were at.
It's a prick of a thing.
Right about here, I think.
But another one. This is in Scientific Reports. This is part of the Nature series of journals, a very high-ranking journal. Emergent properties of giant vesicles formed by a polymerization-induced self-assembly reaction. Here's one of many recent examples published in 2017 of standard chemistry being portrayed as having something to do with the constructing of a living cell. I should point out that these folks are part of the, we'll see. A team, here it is, a team from the Origin of Life Initiative. That's what it is, a team from the Origin of Life Initiative at Harvard University. So they're under the gun to really make some advances here. Performed a known type of polymerization reaction in water called reversible addition fragmentation chain transfer, RAFT. This reaction type is not seen in nature. It is purely a synthetic process. The monomers that were chosen are all synthetic and unnatural. This is a standard chemistry used to make polymers wherein there is controlled radical polymerization reactions that can afford a polymer chain bearing a hydrophobic block attached to a hydrophilic block when two different monomer types are used sequentially. The researchers observed these to form polymeric vesicles during the polymerization, which is interesting but surely not extraordinary. While they kept the radical chain growing through ultraviolet light activation, a typical activating source, the vesicles grew, consuming monomer within the vesicles to the point where the vesicles would burst. Again, nothing surprising. A critical vesicle size is reached, and then the forces between the growing vesicle and the surrounding water dictate a critical growth volume before the vesicle ruptures. The vesicle moves toward ultraviolet light, likely by heating gradients induced by the light source or reaction thermodynamics. Chemists like myself find this type of polymerization reaction to be interesting. It is a fine job for the researchers and well worth publishing. The claims should have ended there. Here's what's actually written in the research articles. This is a cut and paste from the article. The observed net oscillatory vesicle population grows in a manner that reminds one of elementary modes of sustainable, while there is food, population growth seen among living systems. The data supports an interpretation in terms of micron-scale self-assembled molecular systems capable of embodying and mimicking some aspects of simple extant life, including self-assembly from a homogeneous but active chemical medium, membrane formation, metabolism, a primitive form of self-replication, and hints of elementary system selection due to spontaneous light-triggered Marangoni instability, which is surface tension gradients. That is hype out the wazoo. It's just extreme, just extreme. Was that concluding statement justified? See, he says here, it reminds one of, just because A reminds me of B, it does not make A an embodying form of B. It's just my imagination. If the disc-shaped vesicle reminds one of a flying saucer, is it a simple extant flying saucer? No. No extant life, not even simple extant life was demonstrated. It was such hype. So this is what was then written in the Harvard Gazette. The Harvard Gazette, which the university papers talk a lot with the researchers before they let this thing out. In my experience, I've been doing this for years. And they wrote an article called Mimicking Life in a Chemical Soup. From those excessive extrapolations by the authors, the claims were then rephrased and projected to the lay public by the Harvard Gazette and other news outlets. Quote, a Harvard researcher seeking a model for the earliest cells has created a system that self-assembles from a chemical soup. Remember that word, soup? Primordial soup? From a chemical soup into cell-like structures that grow, move in response to light, replicate, and exhibit signs of rudimentary evolutionary selection. Is that a fair representation of the article? Surely not. And here's the references on those, some of them from the Harvard Gazette, and then lots of other journals that copied this.
Grandpa?
You know, something very interesting about that is, you know, you might think, oh, the hype being done by more like outlier, not necessarily mainstream or credible news sources, right? Yeah, Harvard. Harvard News, like, or the Harvard Gazette. Like, in terms of academic news sources, is there anything has much more, at least hypothetical, credibility than the Harvard Gazette? Just saying.
That's why Godless Engineer and people like that are brainwashed. That's why Erica and Godless Engineer people aren't that bright, really, are so easily brainwashed. I mean, look at what he's reading out. Look how they make it sound. They make it sound like they've got it all worked out. You know, that what chance do some of these people have that don't know God? Impossible, no chance.
Well, no, I agree. That's a great point, Jason. And it's something I try to force myself to recognize in some of the interactions I have with the YouTube Evo activists. And then at the same time, though, a lot of these people are doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down on their positions. And it doesn't matter how many times you can annihilate the credence and the remote plausibility of their position, as while simultaneously pointing out their own ignorance on the topic. And them come back at you and claim with force that you're the one who doesn't know what you're talking about. And it's like, I literally just annihilated you. And you're claiming that I didn't do that, that you also, I tell you what, I still haven't gotten over the fact in like my first debate with Erica, there were multiple occasions where she freely admitted she didn't know what I was talking about. It's like, so you literally don't understand the words that are coming out of my mouth, but you are arguing that I don't understand the whole point being made.
Well, that's the thing. They know you. They know that you're not right, and that's their starting premise and their fallback. And so, if you've already decided that the person you're talking to is some deluded believer in God that doesn't exist, you can just kind of scoff anything the other person says off, and they don't really listen. I mean, I think that's basically what happens when you claim to be an atheist, but you're not even really an atheist. You're an agnostic. And so you don't want a burden of proof. You just want to, I mean, what is that? It's just showing that I don't even know what your motivations are then, because I mean, anybody who wants to actually change somebody's mind about something is going to take on that burden of proof and want to use that to show they're right. And so it's just like, you got to wonder if they're even engaged in the conversation sometimes.
Well, that's a good point. I think with the, as SFT likes to call them, the team dodgeball, SFT will do, he does a ridiculous amount of videos, like debunking their positions, citations, displaying the literature to help make good old RJ James Downard not have a conniption. And then in their quasi responses, they act like they didn't have, standing, and anybody like didn't actually bring anything of substance to the argument. And it's like, hold on. You demand literature. They display the literature, and then you claim that they didn't display the literature. So, like, which one is it? And by the way, for those of you who don't know and think I'm like going nuts with saying literature rather than literature, I'm making fun of RJ Downard. That's what he talks about every time. Show me the literature. Anyway, all right. Jungle, you got anything you want to add before I press play again?
Yeah, I'm wondering if they're actually going to even act like they take notice of this series here, or even respond to it. Because if they don't, then I don't know. They just don't have.
Here's what Dr. Tour needs to do. He needs to run an ad campaign and select Wannabe Dave's channel as the only channel that the ad runs on.
Yeah,
I think it would be hilarious.
I'm
Hey,
just going to find out them all.
Hey, so ladies
Sorry,
and
I'm going to email them all. I'm going to email them all. That's what I was going to say. I'll find out who they are and email the whole. I've got it all. I've got all the series so far in a doc. I'm going to email them all the doc.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That would be funny. But I think it would be priceless if Dr. Tour, like I'm talking like, did a promo, like a commercial, and it's like, hey, so if you're seeing this video, you are getting ready to watch a video from Professor Dave Explains. And I just want to let you know that I am the Dr. Tour that he claimed didn't know what he was talking about. I decided to do a full 13 lecture series where I, as a synthetic organic chemist, PhD, one of the most cited chemists in history, respond to the assertions made by Professor Dave that I don't understand chemistry. So go ahead and click this video and it'll take you right over to the playlist. And just take some time and maybe you can find yourself being educated and realize that while Professor Dave may be qualified to explain some of the basics of chemistry, he is not my peer. Man, that would be hilarious. Anyway, okay, let's get back to this.
So anyway, here are three researchers, Van Kronkendonk, Joe Kick, and Deemer. They were published in Life Springs, and then published an article called Life Springs that came out in Scientific American that was talking about some of the work that they had done early and some of the work that they had done. Let's see what they did. Lipid bilayer assembly experiments were conducted by teams from University of California, Santa Cruz, the University of New South Wales in Australia, and they disclosed a summary of the work in 2017. These teams combined nucleotides and lipids in water to form lamella, with nucleotide sandwiches between the layers. Recall that nucleotides are trimers of a nucleobase, carbohydrate, phosphate, and in this case, they were purchased in pure homochiral form, so already in a well-developed state. The lipids were also purchased in pure homochiral form. They showed that a condensation polymerization of the nucleotides via the preloaded phosphate with the purchased stereodefined alcohol moiety on a neighboring nucleotide can take place within the lamella upon dehydration. They further demonstrate that similar reactions can occur at the edges of hydrothermal fields associated with volcanic land masses to provide the heat needed for the reactions. The chemistry is indifferent to the heat source, whether a volcano, a Bunsen burner, a laboratory heating oven. The nucleotide will polymerize upon reaching a critical concentration and temperature. The chemistry is unremarkable since it is preloaded through the purchased derivatives. They bought this stuff. The reaction, this work addresses the essential concentration needs by removing the water and driving the intermolecular reactions to form oligomers that resemble the nucleic acids. The problem with a condensation step growth polymerization is that any alcohol can compete for the reactive electrophilic site. But in the researcher's case, they conveniently added only nucleotides and no other alcohols. This system is stacked to work through its purity. Condensation polymerization reactions need to be very pure, free of competing nucleophilic and electrophilic components, as explained by Carruthers' equation, defining degrees of polymerization based upon monomer purity. If there happens to be amino acids or carbohydrates or carbohydrates with the nucleotides, so other carbohydrates, these would terminate or interrupt the growth of the nucleotides. Moreover, the researchers did not confirm the detailed integrity of the claimed structures, which, if carefully analyzed, would have shown attacks from unintended hydroxyl sites. You look back at their data, I didn't see a good NMR showing anything, any structured determination to show the integrity of that. Nonetheless, even with short nucleotides form, they're not a usable form of RNA, since there's no useful sequences. There's no codon. It would be like a book of random letters, or in this case, a small book of all the same letters. The authors suggested that the lamella sandwiching nucleotides eventually break off to form lipid bilayer vesicles containing nucleotide within vesicle constructs, which they call protocells. The conversion of planar lamella into lamella vesicles, onion-like structures, as they hydrate, is well established, but these generally need shearing, extrusion-type mechanical forces, sonication, or peptides in order to form the requisite lipid bilayers. So the researchers' yields of the desired vesicles were surely to have been very low. The conditions used are hard to fathom, being found in a prebiotic earth. Homochiral nucleotides in high chemical purity, trapped in a lamella, composed of homochiral stereo and regiochemically pure lipids. Even accepting that improbability, those obtained vesicle structures have almost no resemblance to cellular lipids that have a vastly more complex constituency. The authors are merely forming lipid bilayer balls made from purchased homochiral lipids containing some randomly sequenced nucleotides from purchased homochiral nucleotides. While exciting chemistry to the origin of life researcher, nothing here is chemically remarkable, and it has almost no resemblance to a real cell. Nonetheless, behold the claims written in the published paper. Quote, then, in the gel phase, protocells packed together in a system called a progenote and exchange sets of polymers, selecting those that enable survival during many cycles, unquote. But chemicals know nothing of survival since they are indifferent to survival. There's no mechanism shown for how their protocells would bear different sets of polymers or exchange their sets of polymers between them, or make a selection process. The researchers misappropriate terms from biology and use them in prebiotic world in a manner that makes no chemical sense. None.
The level of mic drop moments from this, the level of mic drop moments from this lecture is just priceless. I mean, it's been, it's just time after time. Like, man, like, back it up, bro. Like, come on, back up your crap. If you're gonna bring these strong assertions, then you better be able to, back up your BS. It's
You got lots of papers, though. Lots of papers.
Well, true. Before I keep going, Jason, you got anything you want to add real quick before we go on to the next segment?
No, I'm just enjoying watching it. Oh, shame it's going to be over soon. Damn it. Oh,
well. Jungle, you got anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was just remembering that when I first started out on YouTube, I didn't really understand what all the problems were as a Christian myself. And so I can now, looking back, I can now see why some believers have a problem understanding what the issues are, and unbelievers. Because I was thinking, like, well, maybe, what if there was a biogenesis, but then there's the law of a biogenesis that life can only come from life that was determined long time ago, and ever since then there's just this war as to whether or not that can happen, and obviously with all these problems it can't even possibly happen.
wasn't it 40% of people? He says that 40% of people believe that they've made a frog in the lab, and 74% of people between the ages of 25 and 34 think that they've made a cell in the lab. And there's some survey, I don't know if it's in further ones on or ones back before this or whatever, I don't know, but anyway.
Yeah.
That's a pretty funny survey, though.
Yeah, because they do make, they do copy information and insert it and make some kind of cell or something, but that's all.
No, they think they made it from scratch. These people that they surveyed, the 5 to 35 or whatever age group, that they said 74% believe that they actually made a cell from scratch. Right. They got all these chemicals together in the lab and they've put them all together and made living cells. Like, no, not like that.
Right,
Already living
because it's a
here.
bait and switch.
Like-
It's a bait and switch tactic where they'll say one thing and then they conclude another. Totally different.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
That's what they do. It's their trick, bait and switch.
Nope. No, I would completely agree with that. That's a great points, guys. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, it is.
Furthermore, the best adapted
Switch thing.
protocells, after writing this, the best adapted protocells spread to other pools or streams, moved by wind or water, and some develop the ability to use carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. There is no suggestion regarding the meaning of best adapted. It is again a misuse of terminology. Photosynthesis is a highly precise process requiring many enzymes, well-ordered electron funnels, and precisely defined distances between photon receptors and electron injectors, with electron transfers traveling down defined homochiral polypeptide chains. This statement not only blurs the line of realism, but it is fallacious. Quote, after much trial and error, one protocell assembles the complicated molecular machinery that enables it to divide into daughter cells. This paves the way for the first living microbial community, unquote. There is neither a demonstration on how molecular machinery is made, nor even a proposal. The mechanisms needed for cellular division are highly complex, requiring cascades of enzymes functioning in precise and timed manner. This is utterly inconceivable based on the demonstrated results, and nothing proposed, let alone demonstrates, paves the way for the first living microbial community. This is hype to orders of magnitude extreme, written by the origin of life researchers themselves, and this is what confuses the field.
Hang on,
There
guys.
you go.
Hang on.
Boom.
And this is for Jamie.
Paper. Have you ever seen paper? Look at it. Smell it.
All right, here we go. Okay.
They got a stack of them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They further write, and these, quote, ultimately evolve into a primitive metabolism that were required by the earliest forms of life, unquote. It seems to be commonplace that origin of life researchers are co-opting terms from biology, biological evolution, and moving them into the prebiotic vocabulary. It is unhelpful to do that. Molecules are indifferent to moving toward life. Furthermore, what is a primitive metabolism? There's nothing being metabolized. There's only a condensation polymerization, a simple chemical reaction based upon the addition of nucleophiles to electrophiles. Such a reaction is never referred to as a metabolism within synthetic chemistry. The origin of life assembly claims are akin to buying 20 pounds of sliced turkey meat, adding a gallon of turkey broth, warming, sticking in a few feathers, and suggesting that proto-turkey, primitive turkey, or extant turkey has just been synthesized. Nothing's going to come gobbling out of your pot where you take 20 pounds of turkey meat and you add some turkey broth and warm it up. That's what these guys have done. They took the elements, they just took RNA, they just bought one nucleotide, one type, and they put that in there. There's nothing there. There's nothing there coming together. And then we're going to learn about RNA. We're going to learn about how unstable it is. Chemically unstable. I'm not talking about enzyme unstable. How chemically unstable it is. And the way it has to be packaged and stored in order to keep its integrity. This is just utter nonsense. Here's where I'm beginning to see some agreement. Clemens Reichert, he wrote an article called Prebiotic Chemistry and the Human Intervention. He writes, such a pure chemical scenario is unrealistic prebiotically, but necessary. Further, he writes, the ideal experiment does not involve any human intervention. He is agreeing with me. If you really want to have a prebiotically relevant reaction, you can't buy pure chemicals. It's unrealistic. You got to use the mixtures you come up with. Secondly, the ideal experiment has no human interaction. So they're devising the most amazing things that they can do, and still they're not even coming close. They're still not even making the building blocks of the building blocks. He's seeing exactly what I'm seeing. He's an origin of life researcher. He's seeing what I'm seeing. Really appreciate Clemens Reichert for speaking the truth here. This is what we need. So in summary, some people not reading the actual origin of life articles suggest that.
But I don't think it's fair to put the blame on scientists. The blame belongs to the press.
And again, some say.
The blame is with the media outlets, not with the scientists.
Well, if you read the researchers' articles, you would see there's a lot of blame to go around. The blame starts with them. It's not just the press that hypes the progress on origin of life. The hype begins with the actual research articles themselves. It's not just the layperson that's misled, but it is those teaching in the academy. So this is where we are. This is what it is. There's a lot of hype to go around. The hype starts with the researchers, and the hype is in the extreme. And this is what confuses the world. In the next video, we will get into the real hardcore chemistry. Everything here has been very light on the chemistry. We'll get into the hardcore chemistry, and hopefully I can bring it to a level where you'll understand what's going on, and we'll learn something in the process, and we'll see where we are on homochirality.
There you go.
Play the next one.
The irony of him saying, "Oh, we just went kind of light on the chemistry," in this one is great. However, folks, before we wrap up this portion of the stream, we need to make sure that we really address and try to understand and put ourselves in the mental shoes of those who believe in abiogenesis and think that no intelligent agent is required. Okay, so just hold your horses, folks, and just I'm going to try and help you really put yourself in the mind of the Evo atheist.
So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah!
I'm such a jerk. That was mean. That was mean. Way to end things.
40,000 zeros. It's one with 40,000 zeros. Anything forming like that and coming to life, forming a cell, and whichever way it happens, it's just impossible.
Yep. All right. So, for everybody in the audience, if anyone wants to join the stream and continue the conversation, the link is it's pinned in the side chat, and I'm going to post it in chat here in a second. If you want to join the stream,
tell him John he should show him his cool avatar thing.
Say that again.
What did play the next one?
I'm gonna do another stream. I'll probably do another stream either tomorrow or Sunday, and I'm gonna do another one for you. Do another one. Okay. That one. I really wanted to do that one tonight. Kind of impromptu, just because I think the hype factor is something that has to be addressed, and I think Dr. Tor did a fantastic job of just being like, "Come on, y'all! Like, what is being claimed here? Like, we've got to address this stuff and no longer allow things to just, get glossed over and, accepted without being questioned." Now, I think what Jamie was saying before he dropped off, I'm uploading it now. I think this is what he was wanting me to play. So earlier I said that Jamie's been having way too much fun with some app where you can apply people's faces to different things. And here's me, I think, from 300.
I am the God King, your king. Glory
Damn, I'm outside taking the dogs to the toilet. I can barely see it, but I'll watch it later.
Yeah, James is having way too much fun with this app. He sent me literally 10 different little clips like that one from different famous scenes. It's pretty funny.
I missed it.
All right, all right. I'll play one more time for you. Okay, are you ready? Jamie, are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm
I
ready.
am the God King, your king. Glory
For glory's sake.
Oh man.
That's the deep fake stuff, isn't it? That stuff's pretty. Oh gee, I just noticed another ripe tomato. You beauty. Sorry.
Yeah, the deep fake apps are everywhere these days, and yeah, some of them are better than others. Different things that your face can fit into, but it's
Yeah, I sent Steve McRae one today because it's his birthday, and it's pretty cool. I mean, it's pretty horrible in a way, but it's him as John Travolta and with clips from Pulp Fiction.
Oh, nice. That I can see that fitting Steve McRae. That's pretty.
I'll send it to you. He liked it.
That's apropos. I get down with that. That's
Yeah, the sound clips are perfect for his style or whatever too. It's funny. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I can Steve McRae. That's a good one for Steve McRae for sure. Yeah, I'll have to. Yeah, but
I'll do it right now. So if you want to watch it, but
what's up, Chris?
Hey, brother! Congratulations, party!
Appreciate you. Did you just joining us, or have you been able to listen to what we were doing?
I've been listening. I had to finish up some work on the computer, but I was doing. But yeah, big congratulations, man. Your channel's really hitting a stride right now, huh?
Well, we'll see what happens,
Seems to be.
man. Yeah, it's going. I mean,
it's kind of in the wake of a couple other channels going down. I saw earlier. I think I don't know why I'm still subscribed to him. I get these notifications. I always just don't go back and unsubscribe. I don't know if it's not too lazy. I don't know. I guess too lazy. But it looks Nakasuchi or whatever. Raging Ronnie said he's going to take some time off. Maybe I think he's going to in his channel or do a new channel or something. So
yeah, he said the rage was dead.
Well, that might be a publicity stunt as far as for a new channel, but then he said he was going to be gone for 2 months. So I'll believe that when I see it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, it's a. I think I watched part of his stream talking about that earlier, and I kind of got a little bit of the vibe from him that maybe he may be kind of having that moment of like, what the heck am I doing?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Like things have devolved into full scale, just like the bottom of the barrel. I mean, the whole stuff with Will Kincaid right now, and that whole back and forth and all the stuff with Smokey. I mean, it's just reached such a level of utter ridiculousness that it's like, are you guys actually doing this stuff? And I mean, I got the whole stuff that Will Kincaid did with Nakasuchi's like daughter, like the pictures of him and his daughter from Facebook and stuff. Like, it's like, bro, you are crossing lines, man. Like, this is just ridiculous. I mean, that picture where that Will Kincaid and they were making fun of Knock on is just wrong. I mean, that was a great picture. That was a great picture of like father-daughter moments, like standing outside.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that was when I saw the picture, I'm like, oh man, that's so sweet, you know?
Yeah.
And like the human side of the raging atheist is being shown in this picture. And what did they do with it? They turned it into like accusations of him being some kind of like I
think what they said
like,
or what Will, I don't mean over talk yet, but what Will said, and that's why I never really joined many streams Will was in. I like 1 or 2. I just couldn't do it because like I just couldn't do it. But I think he said like he wasn't necessarily saying he was, you know, that's what he'd hide behind like comedy or something like that. And dude, you can't do that, man. You know, when you say something via innuendo, it's the same thing. You know what I mean? Like what you're saying. That was there's nothing wrong with that. So. You know, I'm not a big fan of rage per se, but I agree with you.
That's why I don't like comedy, because sometimes they're scraping the bottom of the barrel for a laugh.
Yeah,
you know?
I've always been. I was the class clown, and I mean, I got voted class clown. I mean, you wouldn't know it now, but I was a big jokester, and I've always, I always liked to joke around. But like, as you get older, you get kind of, you're more sensitive to other people, and I was doing a lot of stuff at other people's expense, and that's not the way to go about things, to get humor.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. Yeah.
And it's there's no place for it, man. Not in a Christian community, you're trying to, represent, Christ. So, but he's an atheist. So, well, and then I said that. Then they said, no, he's not an atheist. He's, I don't know what they said, what faith he is, but never got a real straight answer on that.
All right. So we're now going to see real quickly. We're going to see Steve McRae as John Travolta in, what movie did you say this was from, Jamie? Oh, Jamie dropped off, of course. Everybody will recognize that. I'm having a brain fart on the name.
I mean, do you think that God came down from heaven and stopped the wax machine with a pulse? I don't mean disrespect, okay? I respect you. We happy.
Oh man, Steve McRae.
There you go.
John Travolta. Is that who?
Yeah.
But you ask about the character's name in the movie.
Yeah.
It was I'm a brain freeze now.
Man, I would have warned you there. I got
Vincent something, wasn't it? Vincent
Vega.
Vega, that's it. I remember that because the chick was like talking about his name.
I mean, so I've been told, you know.
Yeah. Never seen the movie, huh? I actually seen that movie in the theater.
No.
That's how old I am.
No, I've seen it.
It came back out and they released it back in the theater, I think, when I seen it.
Yeah, that movie was
like a few years after.
Let's see, that was was that like the third or the fourth of good grief, I'm exhausted from today. I should
Quentin Tarantino?
There we go. Good grief, man. I'm I'm
yeah,
tired.
that's I know exactly what you're talking about.
Can't remember Quentin Tarantino's name.
Yeah.
Good grief.
You gotta start getting more sleep, man.
Well, that's not that I mean I got a good night's sleep last night. I just did you hear the first part of like the craziness of my day?
Yeah, I caught that. And then I went in there. That's when I had to do some work in the kitchen. So about it, I missed the second half of it.
Yeah, I'm just worn out. That's all. Physically, it's that's kind of interesting. The random sidebar of like post brain surgery. I know when I'm tired because like one of the very, very few side effects is that my recall just starts to absolutely plummet.
Oh yeah.
It's not quite what it was before. I used to have like basically instant recall and like partially photographic memory.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean I could just
Yeah, me too, especially with numbers. I was like, I'm still good with numbers, but like other things, yeah. It goes when you get older.
well, I know you lose some of that with age too, obviously. But
what's 9 times 84?
Oh, I mean, a recall is like you like give me a phone number or something like that, like math number. But 9 times 84, if a 6 and carry 3, 176. I mean, not 176, 94. 9 times 84. I don't know, man.
756.
What is it?
756. I don't know.
756. I don't know. I got 9 times 84. So 9 and 4 is the 2. Then 9 times 8 is 72. Carried to 4. 800 something would it be? Somebody get a calculator to do it. But go ahead. What are you saying, John?
Oh well, and sidebar from all this stuff. George, thank you so much for the super chat, and he is rubbing it in Australian style. Congrats, John. I'm not rubbing it in, but it's a nice 32 degrees centigrade warm day here. So that's 32. That's what about high 70s, low 80s in Fahrenheit, I think.
Yeah, this is America, George. We do it different.
Celsius to Fahrenheit. Man, I remember in school having to like do all the formulas. Oh wow, it's 89 degrees Fahrenheit. Wow.
Well, 0 Celsius is what, freezing at
yeah, 0 Celsius is equivalent of 32 degrees Fahrenheit. However, the formula, like the conversion formula, doesn't like correlate. You know,
right? It's a different rate per degree.
Yeah.
11 above degrees Fahrenheit is like 11 below it's Celsius.
Yeah, that's
and then 40 degrees and 40 degrees is the same thing in both. I mean, minus 40 degrees.
Oh,
so I do like the way you like it where it's like zeros, you know, it makes it a lot easier. But I'm so used to Fahrenheit that I'd have a hard time doing it.
Well, you know what's very strange. So for those of you who've been following my channel for a while, you know that I'm an American who was born and grew up in England. But the irony is that the UK does not use, well, they, in some way, like for measuring shorter stuff, they measure it in meters, but the distance is in miles. It's like, so your things are in kilograms and pounds, but most things are not in kilograms, most things are in pounds, right? And it's like, and then distance is miles, but your height is in meters. It's so bizarre. But then you also do things in feet.
How many stone do you weigh?
Right.
Yeah, I see that every once in a while. Stones.
Weight is in stone. But then they also use pounds. It's like it's so weird. And then of course you've got Australia and everything's in the metric system. And most of Europe metric system. And then of course where it originated doesn't use it, which I find so ironic. It's so weird, especially the one of all the different things to not use it on distance. I think the UK is the only European nation that doesn't use it for distance. Everything else is in kilometers.
What'd you say they use for distance?
They use miles In
Miles.
England uses miles. Yeah.
Weird.
But everything else, I think it's one of those things. I think it turned into one of those deals of for the UK just being like, no, with the UK, we shall not comply. With the we're our own thing over here on the island. We will not comport with the continent.
There's got to be a story behind that, like for sure. I'm sure. I would think, because have you heard of the international what is it called? International Place of Weights and Measures. What is it called?
I know. I forget the exact name. But
International House of Pancake. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I know what you're talking about, Jamie.
Yeah, it's like it's where I think it's like in France, but it's an international thing, I believe. I'm pretty sure, but like there's a really interesting story about like what constitutes I think everything is essentially now internationally based as far as the what an official a pound is. Everything's based off of a kilogram, because that was like a 1 foot by 1 foot cube of water's weight at water or what do you call it, the ground level or whatever, ocean level.
Right.
Whatever you call that, I can't think of it. It's like I'm in a block, but
sea level.
Now they've developed better and better versions of the official kilogram, and then they give copies of it to like the other major countries. It's goes way back, and like they found that like they would bring them together every so many years to check them, and they get off and like they put them under like a vacuum and like they just kept trying to find better ways to do it, because you'd be like amazed at like how it would come off and how that actually affects the world. And I think now they have like this amazing, it's based off, I think it's made out of silicone, and it's like the world's most perfect sphere, and they like know it to the atom how much it's supposed to weigh. And so it's easier for them to check, but it's like obviously costs a lot of money to make. But you can look up about it on the internet. It's pretty interesting.
That's very cool. So Zeal says metric may as well be Chinese calligraphy to me. Easy is relative.
Well, I know. I'm sorry.
They're responding to Prime Living talking about metric being easy. Here's the thing: like metric is extremely easy. If you can do math on the power of 10, I mean it's
metric's good for dividing by like 2, 5, and
10.
10. Yeah, it's good for that.
Base 10, like it's easy to do the math. It's when you try to do conversions that metric gets complicated and it turns into Chinese. I'm like, okay, what was the formula? And it's like, okay, so a kilometer is like 0.6 of a mile, but it's not quite 0.6. You're going to be off a little bit if you don't need like major distance, that kind of stuff. Like a kilogram is like 2.2 pounds, I think. And it's like, okay, when you're doing quick math of, if something's only, a couple kilograms, it's really
25 millimeters is about an inch. 25.3, I think.
Yeah, I just hate when I'm working on something and it's like from America, like John Deere, like I got a lawnmower, but it's most of it's made in China. If you get down underneath it and actually start looking,
here's the thing,
measurements will go. Go ahead.
No, and your point in terms of like doing actual work, right? Where you're having to measure stuff. It's like, for crying out loud, guys. Like, can we just pick one on the manufacturing side? Like, pick one.
I know it kills me.
Pick one.
Well, it gets worse because then there's Japanese metric and there's UK metric, and they're not the same thing.
I was going to say Jungle probably has a lot of experience with that, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you guys. That's what I'm saying. Like, come on, if we're going to like global manufacturing standards and all that stuff, like for crying out loud, can all you guys get together and just pick one? Like whether it's gonna be Japanese metric, European metric, whatever. Like just pick one, because it is really obnoxious. So when I was like swapping out my battery, I realized that somehow my 10 millimeter socket had disappeared. So I got to go on. That was the other thing I forgot to mention. Yeah, I went on a little side trip over to buy a freaking 10 millimeter socket.
No, you can't lose.
That's
the
most. That's like your most. Yeah, I've got like 20 of those.
I know. And I'm like, I know I have one. I mean, because exactly, I was like, 10 millimeters gonna be the most common. And
I'm looking like an 11. Sometimes they don't have it on some of, at least back in a certain period of the 90s, I think.
Well, Brady, normally he says get your 10 millimeter wrench out. I agree. However, these little bolts in the freaking Japanese vehicle, the way they were positioned, you couldn't access them with just a wrench. You needed a socket to be able to loosen them up. Yeah. It's
I know 10 millimeters, 1 centimeter. So they'd be asking for your 1 centimeter wrench. That's the only one I probably know out of any of them.
Yeah, in the stock market, they had to change over to metric because the fractions were just too messed up to try to trade. They changed over when I was working the stock market. The penny stocks changed to metric, but that it works better in metric.
Do you do any kind of do you do any stocks like any online or anything like that?
Not right now. I haven't done it in a while. I was doing it when they started surging in like 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at these stocks going up 300%, 500%.
I know, me too.
I'm saying, boy, I got to get in on this
I'm thinking about it, man.
In one day. And so I started trading the penny stocks.
Oh, you're talking about back then, but there's some money to be made right now, believe it or not. But I think it's going to be short lived. But
but you have
you
to
saw
watch.
it was.
Yeah, you could have made a lot of money with this Biden thing,
Yeah,
and the gas and everything.
Exactly. I called it and should have known it. Like gas, futures on gas was because they were gonna. Well, that storm though, you saw that storm that kind of might change things because like they may not be so quick to go off the natural gas, but they said they're gonna still keep. If they have to use trucks or whatever, they're going to go get bring it down and refine it. So
yeah, it'll be worse by not having that pipeline.
Right. It's going to be more pollution. So, I mean, I can't believe he done that. That's like the biggest thing is like, why would you do that? I mean, that's already, even if you didn't like it, it's already in place and all that, everything's been done so much. Yeah, it is posturing.
It's political. Yeah, it's all political.
Well, so they can sell their gas, like all these other countries can sell their gas. They got stocked up. Go ahead.
You talking about Keystone?
The pipeline, yeah.
Okay. So do you guys know the real reason that the Dems have been blocking it and it's been shut down? Like the real reason?
Well, first of all, when it originally started, it was over that land and the
No. I don't mean the talking points and like the political BS. I mean the real reason that anybody gives a rat's ass.
Because Trump did it.
Nope. It's Warren Buffett.
Really?
Warren Buffett bought for like stupid amounts of money. Like it was one of his biggest, most, at least at the time, considered like overvalued acquisitions ever, which was the railroads that were shipping all of the oil. And he made multiple acquisitions. I'm talking at like crazy valuations. Okay. And everybody was like, okay, I mean, get the point of this, but like not at these prices. Like it was a whole thing of like, why is Warren Buffett making these acquisitions, right? Because he basically like bought up all of the railroads that create the chain from Canada down to Texas. And behind the scenes, he's been pushing hardcore against the Keystone Pipeline because if the Keystone Pipeline gets completed, his and all those acquisitions now become not worthless, but
bad investment.
It becomes one of his worst investments of all time.
That
like
makes
Warren Buffett.
Total sense.
So I mean, when I say huge, I'm talking like in the billions. Okay, like he bought this one railroad. It was like for $3.5 billion.
Yeah, but how much is he worth, man? My goodness, he's worth.
Well, he's company. Well, he's rich, but this was his company acquisition.
Right? But they don't like lose money, though. I know that about rich people. It don't matter how much they got; they still don't like losing.
Right. So it's like why would like there was massive pushes by Warren Buffett to all the Dems, and he was going after Republicans. Like I'm talking like during Obama era. Then okay, so that's why it was getting blocked during Obama, right? And all the fluff from like the environmental groups and all this kind of stuff, it's complete. It's like from their perspective, the little freaking, the nonprofits and stuff. Yeah, they were all hyped up. They believe what I don't think they believe all of it, but a lot of them, they actually buy into the bullshit they're spewing. Right. But here's the thing, like a lot of the Indian, like the Native American tribes, they were supposedly having all these, pushbacks against it. They were actually negotiating for higher freaking payment. Like while saying, "Oh, you're defiling our land," they were literally negotiating for higher buyouts.
Yeah,
for the access. So it's like, no, let's get real. And then fast forward to now. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Guess what? The leaders of different tribes that supposedly were against it are now publicly pissed off at Joe Biden, asking for him to reopen it because they had negotiated awesome deals.
Yeah.
So the ones who supposedly were having their land defiled got the deal they wanted. Now they're pissed off at Joe Biden.
Karma. Well,
So
what
it's
Brady
like-
says down there, and I'll add to that, I'll add the big tech companies. And did you guys see where Zuckerberg got caught saying that the virus could alter your DNA or your RNA? And so they had to change he had real quick. They had to change the rules on Facebook where you can say that without being permanently blocked off of Facebook.
Oops.
Yeah, I've got it in a video. It's in a video. It's funny.
Well, you know what's funny is Jack Dorsey and Zuckerberg, like the way they keep going down these paths of just blatant attempt at mind control and censorship. It's like
They know it's better for you.
It's like you do realize that you're setting yourselves up for the most epic collapse of your empires. Like right now they think they're too big to fail. They have all out. And I think it's interesting to see what happens with the Australia
Google
issue right now. Like Facebook is still doubling down against having to pay for access, and Google has caved and made a deal. And it's like, all of the bad things about Google aside and their control and such, Google usually they make pretty solid moves on the big
yeah,
like the paradigm moments, right? The paradigm defining moments. They usually make the right decision. But Facebook is refusing to. And it's like, man,
we're due for a solar storm too.
We're due for what?
One of those EMP blasts from the sun or whatever it is. And they haven't.
You're talking about the solar flare?
Solar flare, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
that'll take them out.
That's very true.
Cheryl Lindsay said that the Apple and Facebook are feud, and they do, and they will, and Google, they'll all feud, but it's kind of like they're all in the club, but they don't want to let nobody else in, so they won't. It's just like fight amongst themselves, but we're not going to let nobody else, get in. So they'll come together when they need to.
Well, what I don't
like to get rid of Trump, for example.
What I don't get about Facebook, and I understand Google caving, because I think Google is recognizing that they've gotten to such an extent that global pushback against their monopoly is reaching a potential catalyst point where the politicians are not going to be able to they can't buy them anymore. Or they have been, they still are, obviously, but like they may not be able to keep the politicians from having that breaking point where they have no other choice politically than to break up the trust.
Well,
or the monopoly, I mean.
Mm.
And I think that because like the last report I saw is that between Facebook and Google, they control, I think it was 81% of all online advertising.
Really?
I mean, on a global, not just on a national scale, on a global.
Don't you hate these? How this remember how you used to be able to search the internet and like the first 20 things that come up were all ad related. So like if you wanted to search something, it's like you got to go through click 10 pages to get to your information, and it's like that didn't used to be the case. You could click on there and get your information, and you may have an ad here and there, but now it's just ridiculous. The first 10 things are ads.
Well, what really I find very interesting is
or ad promoted.
So back when I was much more involved in tech, like search optimization, digital marketing, all that kind of stuff was like something I was like doing on a day-to-day basis, right? Researching, having to stay up to date because clients are coming in, needing that kind of stuff, right? And I had to understand it. Otherwise, how can you convince somebody to do business with you, right? If you don't understand what the hell you're talking about. And it's very interesting to have observed kind of the points you were making, right? So it used to be there were max of 3 ads before the organic results. And there was a clear distinction, like there was a very significant color separator that was the background of the ads versus the organic, right? Now, fast forward to today, there's still a separator, but it's very faint. Like the color itself that is delineating between paid ads and organic results is very, very mild, right? Then you factor in Google Local or whatever they're calling it these days. They've changed that name like 6 times. And then very often between, you've got the paid ads, the AdWords at the top, then you've got the local results, then some more ads, then the organic. And then it used to be always 10 organic results per page. Now it varies between like 6 and 11 or 12, but usually it's like less than 10 now. And so when I'm talking about below all the ads, below all the local results. So like when you think about that from a business perspective, the way they have reconstructed the user interface and the layout of the search results, it's almost like if you're going to be in a business and expect to have any kind of online customer acquisition, you basically have to pay for AdWords.
And don't they own all the cloud too? Like all the cloud.
Well, that's what it is.
data.
Well, I mean, Google owns a lot of the cloud, but I mean, Amazon owns a gigantic chunk of that too. But
Oh, that's right. It's Amazon, I think.
Well,
is made up.
Amazon and Google. Amazon, Google, and Microsoft have a giant chunk of that market share, and then you got some other smaller players like that are growing, like Rackspace, and there's some other.
Brady's right though. I do need to. I have those different browsers that I need to start using them. I just, everything's so connected though. But if you try to, like when you switch out, I've got these my phone paired up with my PC, and it's like it wants me to use Bing. It's like, oh, it's frustrating.
Well, and Bing sucks. Microsoft gave up.
God, it sucks. Yeah.
I mean, Microsoft acquired Yahoo for their search algorithm, kind of took it, cloned it, turned it into Bing. It was pretty good for a while, but then Microsoft realized, like, oh crap, not only did Yahoo not have very much market share when we bought them and then rolled out Bing, we're losing market share. And they've kind of given up on making their algorithms be cutting edge. So it's kind of like, whatever. But here's the other problem with, like, even with some of these other browsers that are coming out, many of them are still using Google's search API. So it's like, yeah, I'm in this other browser, but they're still using Google's search technology. So I might as well be in Chrome, and have less bugs. I mean, anyway. I'll say that I think as we're observing with all the stuff that's been going on globally, this past year, the complete and utter suspension of due process in terms of data acquisition without a warrant. I mean, it's insane. Like, I was so pissed off in Tennessee when our governor, who's quote unquote supposedly a conservative, was making his decisions based on the data tracking from cell phone carriers that indicated that drive time and people driving on the roadways wasn't declining enough. So they decided to extenuate and initiate different, either extenuate or initiate different lockdowns and restrictions based on my cell phone data. Like, you didn't get a warrant for that. Why are you tracking my GPS? Why is the carrier disclosing this information without a warrant? Supposedly it's supposed to be private data. And if you were going to charge me with a crime, you would have to have a freaking warrant to be able to have access to my GPS data. But in the madness of 2020, it's like, oh, well, let's just forget all that stuff. Here is it, not just for one person, for the entire state. I was so pissed. Anyway, sidebar on my diatribe there.
Well, no, it made me mad because, like what you were talking about, these search, when they pop up there, they used to have you could get straight to your like the organic ones like you were talking about. But I was just looking like health issues, especially things if you're trying to look at health issues, you have to look 10 ads to try to figure out what a condition is or something. It's just frustrating, man. Like if you're having a certain pain or ache or something, you're trying to figure it out, and then they make you go through 20 things just to figure out what you're looking at. It's like what that they need to have that something where they can control that. I mean, why would you need ads on that? But I guess if they can make money on something, they're going to do it. I can see them doing ads on just your basic stuff, like if you want to look up something, I don't know, for cars or anything like that, and they're putting their ads in there. But certain things should be separate, and news related. I think news related stories too, you should be able to get access to news without having stuck with all the ads in there, or basic news.
Yeah, true. Brady, to my knowledge, and I'm pretty sure that DuckDuckGo has made the public assertion that they are not using Google search in their browser. I don't know. I don't know. They claim not to publicly. I'm not going to say that they are or they're not. I don't know. I've just noticed that their search results have been getting more and more similar because I've done comparisons and stuff, and I've noticed that their search results are getting extraordinarily similar to Google's, but that's just me.
Man, have you know? I've noticed this, or like I'll be talking to my mom about something, and then whatever or like I'll be googling something on like my phone or my PC, and then or on the phone usually, and then I'll talk to her, and then she won't do anything, and then she'll get ads based on what I was telling her that I had been searching about on her phone.
Oh yeah,
so they're spying, man.
It's now well recognized that they are accessing your. Yeah, they're actually microphones. I mean, it's nuts. We are in full scale surveillance.
Keywords, yeah, they're having to do keywords or something like that. They just have to be, because we're talking and she's not looking anything up, and I don't know unless they're getting it maybe from like a text. If I may mention something in a text, I have to look and make sure. But I'm pretty sure it's happened to me before. Like I'll be saying about strawberries, and then strawberries will come up in an ad. I'm like, I don't remember typing anything about strawberries. I remember talking about it, but
Well, here's the thing where beyond doubt that they're listening to you, right? So
I know they are, but I'm just saying, like, I mean, for a fact, I didn't know they could use the information though. But go ahead.
I'm just saying, like, example purposes, right? So, like, if you can be watching TV, right, and you start to search, you type in 2 letters, right, and let's say you're searching something that's relevant to the or that's been sparked by the TV show that you're watching, right?
Yeah.
You type in 2 letters, and it will complete out.
Yeah.
Something that's relevant to the TV show that you're watching.
Like it's reading your mind almost.
And it's like, okay, so if you are being able to extrapolate out my search result from my search query from 1 letter, and it directly correlates with the TV show that I'm watching, yeah, you're listening. And there's no other plausible way that you could delineate that from 1 letter.
Yeah,
like it's
you
not
can't
plausible.
take your battery out of your phone either. Like Zuckerberg, he has like all my cameras. I got them all blacked out with black tape. I mean, just every one of them. I don't, because I got spied on a chess game like I was telling you about. That happened a long time. It was like 5 years ago or 6 years ago. So ever since then, I've always just black tape over my cameras. But as far as audio, I mean, you're getting listened to. I mean, for a fact. I think there's on most of these TVs, there's like a law. Isn't there a law where there's a certain thing that you can't take out? It's I forgot what it's called, but
they've granted themselves like the ability to remote access.
And it's supposed to be just for like, I mean, like if it's surveillance for like it's stuff during, I guess probably based off of the Patriot Act, but I mean not necessarily came with that, but extensions of it, because they kind of like people got all up in arms about it, and then but they still put in there's stuff that we don't know about that's hidden that they're allowed to tap into. I mean, like right now, if they wanted to, I'm sure they could just zoom right in and tap into my house and listen to my TV, my internet, and camera if they turn it right on if it's off. So you got to put black tape over it.
Well, and you also have to think about it. Yeah, the vast majority of home security systems have two-way communication protocols.
Oh yeah,
right. And I mean, not just from your cameras, but like through your control panel, they have two-way communication, like the security company does, right? Well, how all these security companies that are being acquired by Google and Amazon specifically, are making most of the acquisitions. They have acquired these companies, and then they've made deals with law enforcement to give them remote access without a warrant to the security systems. And it's like, huh? So you're telling me you don't have to have a warrant to be able to access the video feed from my house? like you can remote turn on the microphones and the video, or like the microphones from my cameras or the microphone from my control panel. And so like some of the control panels have cameras too. You can remote access all this stuff, and you don't have to have a warrant. Like there's been some major pushback against. Of course, it got glossed over, but it was it was December 2019. There was a big thing that came out about Ring after their acquisition by Amazon. And what I'm talking about, like, it came out, and then Amazon like, oh, we're gonna make modifications to all this stuff. BS. And it's like, you're granting warrantless access to Big Brother. That's freaky.
Yeah, well, I know they're listening, and like I said, I know they're listening. You know, even phone calls, we know they're listening. They pretty much store a phone conversation pretty much in a big server somewhere, probably in the underground, in the mid, you know, somewhere where, I mean, in the middle of America, where it's way deep down or something. You know, because I know it's got to be, everything's gonna be kept cold and dry. But they search keywords, and I'm okay with that. It's just like, as long as they're not able to like use any of that against me, you know what I mean? As far,
Well,
I mean, unless I would say something like it has to do with the Patriot Act, you know what I mean?
that's the
Like,
problem. If they're on the wrong side, then they'll be causing mischief with their access. You know, that's what the problem is.
like local law enforcement would used to do that with like back when, if you remember, like cricket services, when it was like, you know, analog, they would listen into phone calls, and they wouldn't be able to use it like against you. You couldn't get like I mean, they wouldn't be able to use it in court, but they would be able to like hear what you're doing and then like pull you over, you know, like, you know, that usually gets drug dealers, you know, listen to what they were saying and doing. And that's when they went digital to those chirp
The
phones and
problem
stuff.
is they don't go after the real crimes, the actual crimes, the serious.
Oh, I know.
crimes.
Yeah, I know.
And they're just, you know, using it for their own purpose or whatever. You know,
Think about how many crimes that they hear and listen, they know about, and they just can't really act on because, you know, they're out themselves and they just let it go.
Yeah, well, it's not just that. I mean, serious crimes, political crimes, all that stuff. They just ignore. You know.
Yeah.
Well, that's very true. Okay, so we've had so Pigs Can Fly has joined us. What's up, man? How you doing? You just get off work?
Good to see you, buddy. We've been all over the place since I came in.
Yeah, I got off work about an hour ago, but I got kids and they just woke up, so I had to do all that. And they're still up right now, but we have them watching a movie right now. So we don't really like them to be up this late, of course, though. Hey, did you see that video that Matt Powell made of your debate with Godless Engineer?
I did. Yeah, that was.
I was laughing pretty hard.
Yeah, I was cracking up about that. Actually, you know what? In line with that, I may pull that video. We may play that and then wrap up this stream, because I think that Standing for Truth is actually going live here in just a second.
Cool, no problem.
So let me pull that up. Yeah, man. I watched. I was wondering why I kept getting all these comments earlier from people, and then oh, man, then I found out that he had published that list.
Yeah, I don't care what people say about Matt Powell. I like Matt. I mean, like,
yeah,
he's got a good heart.
Yeah, I agree with him. I mean, I think the only thing we disagree on as far as like theology goes is just that he wants to like enact the Jewish law for like the Old Testament, and I'm like, you do realize that. Sorry.
No, you go ahead. I'm cutting you off. I apologize. Good.
It's all good. I was just saying that obviously in the New Testament it even talks about how their hearts were hardened, and that's the reason why they had some of those laws. And so we're still supposed to love our neighbor, and that includes, you know, obviously homosexuals. But I just think it's kind of, you know, really just one small thing that I think it really separates us as far as brothers in Christ goes.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, being, I guess, the Steven Anderson influence, you know, probably, you know, definitely had a lot to do with him.
I saw the videos.
I don't consider him. I mean, like, I definitely, like with you, I don't want to see a homosexual be put to death. I've actually talked about this on Knock Channel, but I'm not gonna. It's something that and when people say that, it's like nails on chalkboard to me. But I mean, that's still brother in Christ, you know, because like of what you just said, you know, we're in the age of grace, and but like yeah, we need to condemn the action because actively living in the
Exactly.
lifestyle and making it your identity, rather than putting Christ first and making that your identity.
Exactly. No, I completely agree with you.
We're not in a theocracy.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And even Israel, who was in a theocracy, weren't able to keep the law.
Exactly. I mean, they fell into all kinds of sin. So, or go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're right. We're not. Well, I mean, we're not supposed to judge people on how they people that want to observe the Sabbath and Torah observers and all that. That's fine. No judgment there at all. But we're not underneath the old law, so we're not supposed. They shouldn't judge us either. You know what I mean? Because we're supposed to be in the age of grace.
Exactly.
So it should work. That's a two-way street there.
Exactly.
All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap up this one, a few minutes of this video, and then let's all head over to SFT's channel.
Sounds good.
Sure, man.
We'll get some little quick couple chuckles, and then we'll head over there.
Follow you, and your level of knowledge is so low, and you're sitting there spewing these talking points that are so debunked, it's mind-bending. If you have a piece of iron, is it remotely plausible that without a grindstone, that piece of iron is going to turn into a sword? And without a fire?
This has no bearing
It does.
on
Answer the
what we're
question.
talking about.
It does. Answer the question.
Here, let me give you, hold on. Let me, you asked me a question. Let me actually finish answering. Okay, John? All right. So let me give you a good example of how this, of a code that arises naturally, right? Take bumblebees, for example.
Okay, so you're trying to resort to evolutionary signal theory, and which is quite honestly one of the stupidest arguments that evolutionists and atheists try to make, because it requires a completed pre-existing system. Like, do you not comprehend this?
Well, okay. Well, I mean, I asked the question first, so how about you just oblige me, and then maybe I can oblige you. Can you explain the word decimated for me?
You question my knowledge of coding. So, if you're writing a code, what is your background? You say you're an engineer. What is your background with coding?
If you're not going to allow me to answer the question, I'm not going to answer further questions. You understand me, John? This is an adult conversation.
Yeah, and you're dropping insults you can't back up.
I've just come away from the opening, figuring out that you don't like me so much, it seems, as far as my response to you. I guess when you ask me, can codes, as far as we understand them, be generated naturally? Obviously, they can.
I'll put a dare on you. Would you have the CO Jones to go out on camera and literally tell people that PHP invented itself?
No, I wouldn't. But here, let me give you. Hold on. Let me. You asked me a question. Let me actually finish answering. Okay, John? All right.
If you don't think I made an argument against evolutionary theory, then I'm guessing you just are ignorant about evolutionary theory. Is that, I mean...
What I actually asked you to do was differentiate cause and effect from if-then.
If-then literally is a cause and effect. And
well, that's precisely
hang on. It requires, if-thens require foreknowledge of the intended outcome, correct?
I don't understand that bit. I also don't understand, but it seems to me that you just don't seem to really understand like logic gates as far as like coding and coding standards really go.
You just said I don't understand them, so debunk what I just said. Because if you want to continue down this rabbit hole, I will happily pull up.
Well, I mean, you're just baselessly.
So are you gonna make me pull up a paper and like prove it to you?
What?
You gonna make me pull up a paper and prove it to you right now? Okay, so are you now, number one, are you admitting that there is a code?
DNA can be interpreted as a code.
Is it literal or figurative? You obviously don't actually research any of this stuff. It's fascinating to me that you have this many people that follow you and your level of knowledge is so low, and you're sitting there spewing these talking points that are so debunked, it's mind-bending.
But it's ultimately a chemical that goes through different chemical reactions, different processes.
So were you paying attention at all during my opening?
I mean, yes, I've been paying attention to you.
Okay, so are you suggesting that you should fly over to the Royal Society and tell them that's not a literal code?
I would still appreciate you not, doing questions like that.
You insulted my knowledge of coding.
Well, that's not exactly dropping like personal insults against you, which I think is.
Given the fact that I owned a software development company and worked in multiple tech startups, yeah, I think I know a little something about this. So, what is your background?
I didn't know that.
There is no chemical reaction between the codon and the amino acid. It is literally being read. This is a recognized premise in biology, in cellular biology, information theory, that there is literally a read of data being executed by the ribosome. there is no chemical reaction. So to argue that it's nothing but cause and effect, chemistry is absolutely eviscerated at the fundamental of the creation of a protein. There is no chemical reaction between them.
It's ultimately a chemical that goes through different chemical reactions, different processes.
There is no chemical reaction. This is a well-recognized premise.
It would behoove you not to strawman me or to put words in my mouth. I'm just saying that's not how adult conversations work, okay?
How could binary come into existence without an intelligent agent to assign the values to each side of the data set?
DNA can be interpreted as a code.
I don't know, is it literal or figurative?
I believe.
Godless, I don't know how you put engineer after at the second part of your name, because if you, number one, your level of ignorance on this topic is so mind-bending. I do not know how you actually think you're making a remotely coherent separation of these things. There's syntax for what this codon, this triplet of base pairs, equals, does not become, does not transform into, is equal to this amino acid. Right, this is such basic logic. I really don't understand how you're trying to argue this is separate. There were paper after paper. I read several of them this past 2 weeks. So was that all hypothetical, or were they actually doing direct comparison to a code base and its redundancy, its robustness, and its ability to store data?
It seems to me like evolution, naturalistic evolution, has just as good of an explanation as your God did it. I mean, I can't remember everything that you said in that Gish Gallop of,
You just missed my arguments, so back up your claims.
Which claims in particular?
How does arbitrary data values get assigned to a recognized code base through random undirected process? As an engineer, explain to me how that's remotely plausible.
Well, I mean, as I said, I've already explained this in this debate, that natural processes, natural chemical reactions would have resulted in the configuration that would have been most likely to survive, because it did survive. And so over millions of years and over a lot of trial and error.
So obviously you have never researched abiogenesis, because as of right now, the greatest number of base pair nucleotides they've managed to get to hook together without enzymes is 21. So, and that's in a non-prebiotic environment. They've gotten 21 to bind together. So your entire premise of somehow a syntax that has semantics and pragmatics being able to just over millions of years somehow form itself is not remotely backed up by the quote-unquote natural chemical reactions to which you are referring to.
I don't understand how this is prescriptive to the natural world.
You don't understand that? The point that is being made is that even in a controlled environment, which has exponentially reduced obstructions to the processes that you're referring to actually being executed, they can't do it. On purpose, they can't do it. So you're claiming that through undirected natural process, things that we can't do on purpose somehow happened by accident. Is that your claim?
Thank you for inserting more words into my mouth.
Okay, well, let me dumb it down for you then. Are you suggesting that something that is not feasible in a lab is more likely to occur in an uncontrolled, violent environment?
Can I explain?
I'm letting you talk now.
Oh, are you sure? Never mind. Sorry about that. So the way that this doesn't exactly correlate to the discussion of evolution is that God could totally exist. God could have created DNA. God, I mean, for the sake of the argument that we're having right now, that could totally plausibly be a thing.
My favorite part was when he pretty much about midways through where he had to concede that he didn't know what he was talking about.
Man, the number of face palms in that debate was hilarious. The best part of it was I had him face palming in my opening statement, and that one,
that or basically it happened because it happened. Evolution happened because it happened. We know it happened.
Yeah,
because it happened.
Well, I mean, that video we just saw, like, it doesn't have anything about my opening statement, and
that's the best.
Oh man,
that's the best opening statement. I'm not just saying that either. That's the best opening statement I've seen in a debate, and I don't know, man, maybe ever.
I was a complete and utter jerk in that one. There's no ifs, ands,
yeah,
but I went into that one with a
you went in hot.
Well, actually, I mean, I directly stated that there was no quarter was going to be given for. Let me see, where is that stupid thing? What did I do with that? Oh, here we go. Oh, that's after show. Yeah, that was some good times. Well, I'm gonna play a portion of my opening statement. Well, I do that before we wrap up. You guys got anything you want to say real quick while I'm looking for this video?
Yeah, I'll just chip in real quick. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but there's a group that's been trying to make a. It's supposed to be a VR game called Noah VR, and it's basically supposed to be like. Obviously, it's fiction, but it's it's supposed to be like based on the time where Noah's around before the flood, and it basically they're giving like this. I don't know how accurate it could be, but like a pretend world. The three sons of Noah are supposed to go around and search for something. I think it's supposed to be like the tomb of Adam or something like that, and so you're supposed to like go out and travel the world basically before the flood. And there's like Nephilim around and all kinds of stuff that you have to check out and defeat, all kinds of ridiculous stuff in it. I could try to find a link for it. I just wasn't sure if you guys were going to be interested in it or not.
No, that definitely sounds interesting. I'm intrigued. Okay, so I'm gonna play a short portion of opening statement, and then we will go. Anybody wants to like closing statements? And then we'll wrap up.
I'll be real. I'm also going to ask what Stanton's. What's his video? What's he doing tonight stream?
Let's see. It's Universal Common Descent. Has Darwin been replaced? I believe is the title.
Okay, thank you. That's it. I'll let Jungle or somebody say something.
Let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna play the very beginning of my opening statement, and then we'll do final closing thoughts, then wrap up the stream. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight has multiple aspects of me personally. August 9th in the year of our Lord 2020 is both my 30th birthday and the date which marks having lived 50% of my life here in the United States, 50% in the place of my birth, the United Kingdom. It also marks facing off against the very first atheist who came after me personally since I started engaging in YouTube apologetics when he supposedly debunked one of my videos. Now, in that light, let this day stand as a line of demarcation for me and to all those who meet me in the future, whether it be in person or in the digital ring of debate in which we are currently engaged. From henceforth, there will be no quarter given to the enemies of our Creator, nor those who refuse to look beyond the pathetic talking points spewed by my opponent and those like him. The verbal weapons you wield are broken. Your arguments are juvenile and lacking in substance. The more I engage with atheists, the more I realize you are mental children desperate to avoid the obvious. That the dogma of naturalism and its foundation of Darwinian evolution is nothing but a cloud of smoke which is decimated by the wind of rational thought and logical analysis. We are told that evolution is a settled and proven science. Its very foundation is based upon the assumption that information can come from nothing. If this is so, why then does all modern science prove beyond doubt that life cannot reproduce without the genetic code housed in our DNA? In any other context, a person would be considered insane to insist that a language of any kind, spoken or written, could form without consciousness and intellect being required. I ask you, would any rational person argue the numerous languages used for the software and design of hardware required for this debate? Could they possibly somehow spring into existence by chance? Without intelligence and logic, can any of these concepts be devised? I would say no, but I shall let the words of my opponent address this question. I leave the determination of his rationality to you, the audience.
This brings me to what my next video will explain in much more detail, and that is the genetic code, and more importantly, the information it contains. Atheists desperately attempt to avoid the premise that it actually contains real information and is not just purely deterministic chemical reactions.
I mean, it is just chemical reactions. Like I said at the beginning of this, DNA can be interpreted as a code, but that does not make it inherently a code. We can determine certain sequences, and we can know the effect of those sequences on the rest of the organism or on certain biomechanical operations or chemical interactions within an organism. Like, we can determine those things. Just because we can determine sequences in DNA does not mean that it inherently contains code, though.
DNA it's an identical process to computer codes. And it's very interesting that, computer ideas about computers developed early in the 20th century. And, Clyde Shannon comes along in 1948.
But it is not a code. It's a chemical. It's deoxyribonucleic acid. It's an acid. I don't understand why you think it's a code. DNA is no more of a code than Diet Coke and regular Coke.
There needs to be no question that communication theory applies to biology. Okay, all of these concepts can be applied to DNA.
Is that debated anywhere?
Only among people who are ignorant, frankly. Okay. People in the know do not debate.
But not in this credible scientific community. This is well understood.
There is no credible scientific argument to try to say that applying communication theory to biology is somehow inappropriate. There's hundreds of scientific papers that go very deep into the subject. And so, no, there's.
And again, the only people that have ever mentioned this or ever said this or ever expect this are creationists, just like you.
I'm talking at the moment with Perry Marshall and Kevin Ham. Perry Marshall is from Chicago in the United States, and Kevin Ham is from Vancouver in Canada. And we have just taken part in the United Kingdom launch of a huge prize to be won by anybody who can produce the genetic code or a genetic code via natural process, generating it itself. Perry, have I got that right, first of all?
That's right. Any code, any encoding, message, decoding system that can come out of an emergent property from chemicals to code would qualify. And I think it's one of the most fundamental questions in all of science. And it just hasn't gotten the attention that it deserves.
That's right. It hasn't. And I think that's partly why we've been highlighting it in the meeting that we've just had here at the Royal Society in London. You can't get much more prestigious than that, can you?
No, it's
by the way.
It's delightful.
Yes. Now, question perhaps also to Kevin: does it really need to be 10 million? You know, I'm a scientist. To me, that's a huge sum of money.
But it is not a code. It's a chemical. It's deoxyribonucleic acid. It's an acid. I don't understand why you think it's a code. DNA is no more of a code than Diet Coke and regular Coke.
Damn, dude, there's 10 million on the line for this one. I guess you just need to fly over to Oxford, go meet up with the Royal Society and tell them how they've been completely duped on this entire premise of the genetic code actually being a real code, and that they don't need to be remotely associated with it because it could completely decimate their credibility as academics. In the information age we currently enjoy, to me, it's a completely implausible concept to conclude that HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, WordPress, apps, or any of the other aspects of technology that utilize software, they could possibly come into existence without programmers and designers being required.
I agree. That would be crazy to assert, but luckily that's not what we're asserting. That's not what anybody's asserting here. It's only you that's claiming that evolution would entail this. So you're basically building a straw man argument against people that already accept evolution and are misrepresenting their arguments for evolution. You see, the biggest difference here is that we have natural explanations for like why DNA looks the way that it does, why it operates the way that it does, and why the diversity of life that we have here on Earth exists. We have natural explanations for why these things happen. We don't have explanation for why like PHP exists, other than somebody designed it. So what you're really doing here is you're comparing bananas to horses here.
And while it continues to fascinate me that people such as Godless Engineer continue to make these same assertions, I'm just going to pull up a few papers real quick and scroll through them on how the genetic code is a universal enigma from Eugene Koonin. I mean, he's a very high level, actually an atheist, but he admits that there's a code and it's a major conundrum for origin of life. We've got things like dual syntax. I'm pretty sure that syntax is a component of coding and programming. Go figure. Apparently that doesn't exist, but here's evidence that it does. And then here we can really get into some fun stuff where not only is the genetic code have its own programming logic, translational pausing is a subset syntax and code base, which enables a dual control from a timing perspective. We're talking about 3D printing logic rules that are executed through the ribosome through the dual syntax in the genetic code that supposedly isn't a code, even though it houses all sorts of controls, including space and time, which I think is just fascinating. Then you go over into, here's another paper on how computational theory applies to genetics. I mean, you can just go on and on and on with all these different pieces, and you get into information. And here's some interesting stuff about prescriptive information and formal information and how it requires forethought and logic in order for the ciphers and the algorithms to be executed. But according to my opponents, none of this stuff actually exists. There's just no logical, plausible, and probable conclusion you can reach that says binary code will magically transform into syntax, semantics, pragmatics, and all the other if, then, and else logic rules that are required for any type of programming to actually work.
And again, the only people that have ever mentioned this or ever said this or ever expect this are creationists, just like you.
Now, before I go into my formal arguments against neo-Darwinism and modern synthesis, I want you all as the audience to just observe one of the many nanomachine component processes is required for life to exist. Anyway, we'll cut it off there. That was I get more of the breakdown on the evolutionary stuff after that. But yeah, that was. So I guess the last thing I'll have to say is, was I too mean to Godless Engineer?
Well, based on his antics, I don't know that it really matters. I've heard a lot of his debates and a lot of his commentary. He's very incendiary in his commentary and doesn't really care like how he offends people.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're trying to just be, full on Christ-like, then yeah, I guess so. But I don't think that you actually handled it bad at all. Actually, I think the entire time you were actually more or less very charitable to him. So that's just my perspective on it.
I agree with that.
I felt bad for the guy because I mean, after that, I mean, where do you go? You know what I mean? And especially after the Diet Coke thing, I mean, that's just where do you go? And but yeah, you were a little hot, man, but I liked it. I think he deserved it because he's the one that come after your video. Am I right? So.
Yeah. And they're the ones digging their own grave. So
and saying like you creationists is the only one that say it. Sorry, General. Go ahead.
Yeah, they can have fun with that because they're the ones digging their own graves. They're setting themselves up to fall into their own pit that they're digging. So it's their problem.
That's very true.
I think you're balanced for who you were talking to. I don't think you went off on him at all. You were basically just stern. You were clear in your critique of what his what he had to say, which was not much, if anything. And so it actually made sense to be a little bit, forceful.
I think the best part of that debate was just the part where you're basically calling him out for his lack of knowledge. And I mean, like you straight up asked him, like, well, what exactly is your level of knowledge on this? And then he just could not give you an answer. He couldn't even repeat back what you were telling him, a few moments before that, which I thought was hilarious.
Well, I'd say the thing that always blows my mind is, let me see, I make this full screen. This was his replay of the debate, and the title is "John Maddox Doesn't Understand Chemical Reactions." This is him attacking me on the whole aspect of like the codon.
Notice the like to dislike ratio. Oh my gosh.
And I mean, if he did it as a premiere, so it was like all these chats and stuff, and everybody, not everybody, the vast majority of the people in the chat were like talking trash or like how I didn't understand chemistry, and it's like, bro, I cannot believe you're playing this and claiming that I'm the one that doesn't understand it.
So a triplet code with 4 bases covers everything we need here. Okay, we have start codons and stop codons we have to keep in mind listed here. Okay, and as a reminder, right, in translation, the amino acids are delivered by the amino acyl tRNAs. Okay, so the mRNA does not recognize these amino acids directly. We need the tRNAs that allows this reading to occur.
It's like, that's directly from MIT, like a lecture at MIT. Like, there is no chemical reaction, period. Like, there is nothing. They are not interacting.
That's painful.
They do not interact.
And then he played that video saying that I was the one that didn't understand it. And the clip that he played is me making that exact case of like, there is no interaction between the codon and the amino acid. And then he played it saying that I was the one that didn't understand. When I saw that, my mind was so blown of like, does nobody tell this guy that he's an idiot and like that he's wrong? I mean, I'm talking about his own peers. Like, hey, dude, you're wrong on this one. Like, he's got you. Like, you probably want to just let this one, slide and just go away because you were wrong. Nope. Let's double down. But anyway, okay. So, all right, last words, guys. Then we'll. As I've said this like 4 times. Everybody give last words. We'll wrap up and then we'll head over to SFTs.
Never double down on stupid.
I just discovered that we're all Israel. Everybody in Europe is Israel. We all, like Britain is the people of the covenant, and there's all kinds of evidence for that, including Y chromosomes and especially mtDNA. We're mostly Semitic mtDNA, but that's another can of worms.
What's it for that one day?
Yeah.
I cut you off. Pigs can fly. I apologize, buddy. What was you starting to say a minute ago?
Nothing. Yeah, I was just really well. I was just going to say, praise the Lord. We were able to get to this stream and just show off LPP's channel for his celebration. Congratulations,
yeah, man.
LPP.
1,200 subs, man. That's quick, man. I can remember when it was just like we were doing it for like 300 or 400, huh, John?
Congratulations. Man.
Yep, did 300. I think I did 300 to 600, and I think that was the last. I think 600 was the last like tipping point that I celebrated.
Well, congratulations, man. Hard work. You've earned it. Definitely see the work you put in, and I like your overlays and your background. So you put in that work too, and little stuff you've done. I've noticed. So good work.
Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you. And just as a go ahead, Jamie. I see you got off mute.
Oh, I was just gonna say, just more cowbell.
Well, in line with that,
I am the God King.
I appreciate that. I'm gonna get some entertainment out of that. That's gonna be fun. All right, so let's wrap up. Everybody, head on over to SFT's channel, pick up his live stream over there. And as obviously this tonight's stream has covered a lot of different things. I strongly recommend you go over, if you haven't already, go over to Dr. Tour's channel, subscribe, and stay up to date with all that stuff. It will give you massive ammunition in relation to the ongoing debates we all have online and offline with our friends, family, and coworkers. And I think it will also just keep in mind, like, these sorts of things will, if you don't have the knowledge already, it will dramatically increase your confidence. And ultimately, the more you begin to understand these things, your awe of our Creator, the soundness of your faith, and the conclusion that you are not the one who is believing in a sky daddy. Rather, you are the one who is operating from the most rational, the most logical, the most plausible, and the most probable conclusion in relation to the necessary requirements for your very existence. So make sure you keep your minds open, you keep your curiosity, and continue to always look for the end conclusions that are logical, plausible, and probable. Have a great night, y'all.